spies, saboteurs, assassins. Everything I did for the rebellion.
This is Rebel Force Radio's Andor
After Show. After Show.
I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old.
Well, it's a little bittersweet this week with the final Andor After Show here at Rebel Force Radio. Obviously, it's not the last time we're going to be talking Andor. I think we're going to be talking about this series for a long, long time to come, especially when we know that in terms of viewership, similar to what we saw with the Clone Wars as it moved from Cartoon Network to Netflix, in terms of viewership, there's a lot of room to grow for this show. So I think we're going to see a lot of people getting on board weeks, months, maybe even years after this show is long since played out with its final episode. And they're going to be talking about this series for a long time. And I hope that the halls of Lucasfilm and Disney are talking about this show for a long time, because I hope that it becomes influential in future decisions, future projects, and all of that. So we're going to have a great time tonight. We are going to cover it all. Of course, we're going to be talking about episodes 10, 11, and 12, but the sky's the limit. Anything and all things Andor is on the table this week as we celebrate this remarkable and unique chapter in the Star Wars Saga. Never been anything like it. Whether you loved it or you didn't like it, you have to admit there's never been anything quite like this in Star Wars. So we're going to be breaking it all down for you this week on the RFR After Show. So great to be with you. If introductions are in order and you're joining us for the first time, my name is Jason. And with me, as always, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Gorman, Scarif, Kyber, Krennic, Erso, a loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. Okay. I'm ready to start the show.
Is that your shopping list? Or is that just the things you needed to remember for today?
I had to remember all of them. Gorman, say it! Gorman, Scarif, Kyber, Krennic, Erso. Galen Erso. Say it! I need an end game. I think we got the end game. Finally, we got the end game.
You know, they could have called one of these 3 episodes The End Game. It would have been a very fitting title, at least in terms of a lot of characters. It was their end game. We know that it goes on for another couple hours. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I heard from a lot of people, and believe me, I was tempted to click on over at 1:15 in the morning and watch that first. I thought, I was kidding myself. I'm like, I'll just watch like maybe the first 15 minutes of it just to see.
Yeah.
But I knew I'd have been sucked in, and I had a sick kid last night and had a trip to the doctor this morning and all that. So life did get in the way, but I was loving hearing from people that went right into it. And Jim, I don't even have to assume. I'm guessing you went right into Rogue One, at least for a little bit.
Listen, I've had no wiggle room myself. So
all right.
If I had any
shocked.
additional time, I would have definitely watched some Rogue One. I was even considering firing it up about like 20 minutes before we started the show, because that's the only time I've been able to come up for air up to this point. But
it's been a busy week at Rebel Force Radio and just in general life stuff. But did you get your 2 viewings in though?
I did
this week. All right, that's the main thing. Yeah.
I certainly
rely
did.
on that.
That is my priority. I, of course, have seen Rogue One at least a dozen times by now. So not quite at 500 times, but now fueled by Andor, that might actually happen, because Rogue One's... Let me finish my thought here. Rogue One's a better movie. Yeah. I think Rogue One is a better movie now because of Andor. It adds a lot more to it.
Well, I wanted to ask you, because you were one of the first people to see any bit of Rogue One. You went to an event at out in California where you got to see like the first 30 minutes of Rogue One before it even premiered. Yeah. Did you have any idea, any thought all those years ago that we would still be dealing with those characters and that crazy idea that John Knoll had for this little slice of a story right before Episode 4, New Hope.
No, never. As a matter of fact, when they announced there was going to be an Andor series, we were all kind of scratching our head. Like, Andor? He was more of a secondary character in Rogue One to begin with. It's like, Andor, really? And we were calling the series Cassian back then. Now he is more commonly known as simply Andor.
Yeah.
And no, of course, I would have never imagined that something like this would have had the legs it's had. I pretty much was very much convinced that Rogue One was a standalone story. But
yeah,
who knew that the future would be in the past by telling the story of one specific character, not Jyn Erso, who's the most obvious choice to build a series around, but they built it around Cassian Andor, which was really, that was kind of a bold concept, sort of taking a risk. But with Tony Gilroy at the helm of the entire series, it really paid off.
Yeah, it certainly did. And you're right. I mean, Cassian was, coming out of Rogue One, kind of an unlikely character to base a series around, but I'm so glad that they did. And I'm kind of glad that it wasn't around Jyn Erso, because that gave them the opportunity to keep Saw Gerrera as this little special treat that they would drop into this show here and there, as opposed to a whole series built around the adventures of Jyn and Saw, which you would have needed to. You'd have had to have a lot more Saw Gerrera in order to cover Jyn, since he was raising her. Although, I don't know, now that I'm talking about it, maybe that wouldn't be such a bad story, or maybe a movie or something like that.
I thought at least we'd find out why Saw had a droid leg. And we know why Saw has the breath mask now, because he was huffing fuel fumes. But the leg, we just chalk it up to being an injury he suffered out in some raid or something.
Yeah.
And it really just sort of a run-of-the-mill injury, I guess. Nothing, no real good story to tell about.
Can you imagine losing your leg, and if you're Saw Gerrera, that's the least interesting thing that ever happened to you in your life? I can't imagine.
But, we never we never discovered how Saw met Bor Gullet, or what the deal is with Bor Gullet. We never were notified by an Imperial cargo pilot who was looking to get.
I was waiting for that thread. I really was waiting for that thread. But I think, that's what Cassian gets from Tevik. I believe that's the tip that he gets. But if Rogue One is super fresh in your mind, make sure you give us a call and let us know, because I didn't have a chance to watch it coming out of this. Let's do the tail of the tape real quick, and then we'll get to all the meaty discussion. We are talking about Andor Season 2, Block 4, Episodes 9 through 12, all directed by Alonso, and I gotta beg forgiveness here on the last name, but I believe it's Ruiz Palacios. Alonso Ruiz Palacios, and written by Tom Bissell. Original air date for all 3 episodes, of course, May 13th, 2025, for you listening into the future. Episode names: Make It Stop, Who Else Knows, and Jedha, Kyber, Erso, all of them clocking in 43, 38, 41 minutes minus those lengthy end credits. And I got to tell you, I was really glad for the lengthy end credits, Jim, because that episode 12, as Cassian is marching towards his destiny, and we see all the dominoes in place for what's about to happen in Rogue One, and also just spending all this time with these characters, spending time with you, our listeners, all that over the last 4 weeks, I was a little, I don't know, I was a little melancholy, downright sad. And it leaves you kind of on a bummer note. But when the John Williams triumphant music came in, it was like, wow, I really felt energized and excited, and not quite so sad. So that was a great little touch. So if you didn't listen to, or watch rather, all of the end credits, there's a nice little John Williams treat of a suite of music there at the end.
Mm-hmm. Which was nice. It sounded like it was freshly recorded too, with a new orchestra and everything. There were just little things in the performance that I noticed might have sounded maybe a little more aggressive than John Williams would have, working with an orchestra, would have conducted them to deliver. I sense a note of aggression in there.
Wow.
And yeah,
The aggressive cut.
Oddly enough. And there were other little audio things that I was picking up where I was like, oh, this is different. But it was a nice little Easter egg. I wouldn't be surprised if Star Wars starts making that something of a tradition, maybe, when wrapping up stories and stuff during the end credits, just to throw in that main theme, just to remind you of the oxygen of John Williams and the Star Wars oxygen he provides. So I thought that was nice, you know. I thought that was nice. But it was really the story that got me. The thing that really resonated with me the most at the end of the episode is obviously Bix standing there with who is obviously Cassian's child.
Right.
So the two of them were getting busy in that treehouse in Yavin. That's all I know.
Well,
But
she's
there
a
she
beautiful
is.
woman. He's a handsome man. What do you think's going to happen in that idyllic scene there on Yavin?
They're out in the middle of the jungle. I don't think there were like any music clubs or theaters around or good restaurants to go to. It was really, let's make our own entertainment. Either it's play dominoes or a little.
I like to think he's what they call a Yavin baby. I think there were probably a lot of Yavin babies that were conceived at that time.
Yeah.
But well, let's go back to the beginning of the story, and we get to see really Lonnie's last stand. This incredible meeting between Lonnie and Luthen, and Lonnie's got the big kahuna, Jim. He's coming to Luthen with the intel to beat all intel.
Yeah.
And you can't help but think that Lonnie knows that there's something in it for him. Maybe this is his out. He can give Luthen the big scoop and then no more of this, no more of this. So my question is, do you think that Lonnie risked so much to essentially make it stop? Or was he a true rebel? Could you consider Lonnie Young a true rebel?
Absolutely. Probably the truest of the rebels, really. But as far as pledging his life, I mean, they mention at one point in season 1, when Luthen and Lonnie are meeting up in the under levels of Coruscant, Lonnie's on that turbo lift that jerks him around a lot. They mention an oath that Lonnie had taken. And the oath is clearly a lifelong oath. Either you die or the Empire dies. One of those two things are going to happen first. And Lonnie, you know, he did his work. He really did a lot of things to enable Luthen's operation to continue and be successful from time to time. And Luthen's success led to Yavin and that group of rebels being all gathered. I mean, they mentioned several times in this arc that everyone is at Yavin because of Luthen. Luthen built Yavin. These are the things they're saying. If they're speaking sort of in hyperbole or whatever.
I don't think that they're talking about Luthen building Yavin. This is where you and I really disagree. I think they're talking about the foundation of the rebellion. Luthen built the foundation of the rebellion.
Right.
He was the original rebel. You could maybe make a case for Saul.
I'll tell you this.
They wanted nothing to do with him there on Yavin.
That's true. But he did something with that money from the Aldani heist. Clearly. And I think he did more than just use it for payoffs. I think he funneled a lot of that money into establishing a base on Yavin. But yeah, you're right, Jason. They're never specific about it. Like I said, they could be speaking like, there's like exaggerating a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, not exact, like speaking in hyperbole, not being very specific, but just saying that he's really the guy who kicked off the whole cause. He's the first one to really openly take it to the Empire and do so in such a fashion where it wasn't just gut reaction. It wasn't just like knee-jerk reactions.
Sure.
you see his temperament, especially in the flashbacks with Clea. You see how his temperament evolved and how he had a discipline that somebody like Saw Gerrera didn't necessarily have. And the more reckless Saw was, the more at risk he put other rebels, because the hammer was just coming down harder and harder. Saw worked right out in the open. Stealth wasn't really part of his thing. Well, he does say, though, that Mon has no idea where he's hiding out. But I might be getting ahead of myself talking about Saw. We're talking about Lonnie and Luthen, and whether or not Lonnie is a rebel to the core. And I say he is, but he is given so much, and he sees what the Empire does. He sees how the Empire treats failure and insubordination. And treason, he knows, would be death. And so he thinks he's pushed the envelope as far as he can without putting himself and his family at risk. And he's throwing it all at Luthen. But he also knows he has to disappear at this point, too, because he realizes there are breadcrumbs on a trail, a cyber trail that leads right back to him. Because he'd been tapping into Dedra's computer files. So he knows that's going to be discovered. He knows he's going to be outed. He already says that he's been exposed and that he's on the run, but he doesn't want to go to Yavin because of his family. Am I getting that correct? He doesn't want to go to Yavin.
No, I think he's fine with going to Yavin.
Oh, okay.
He kind of says it. He sort of, because Luthen says Yavin, and he sort of says Yavin back to him almost like, Yavin, like, yeah. Oh, that makes so much sense. Right. Yeah. It's got a nice ring to it. I could live there. And then, of course, we know what the next move was.
All right. Well, then that next move totally confuses me, because Luthen obviously kills Lonnie, leaves him there for dead for the loft cat to come over and start sniffing. But if there was a chance that, I mean, maybe Luthen didn't see opportunity for himself or Lonnie to even go to Yavin in the first place.
No, he never did.
Yeah, because Luthen never made it out. I mean, he never made it out of there to go to Yavin. So maybe Luthen realized at this moment that there was no escape for anyone left on Coruscant. No escape for him, no escape for Lonnie. Clea is maybe the wild card here, but definitely not Lonnie.
He knew that this intel was so big that this was it. This was the move. Later on, we'll talk about it when he says to young Clea, when I tell you to move, move. And that's the words that he gives. That's the word that he gives to Clea after he gives her the intel to pass it along. Move. Like, this is the moment we've been waiting for. This is the big one. And unfortunately, it cost Lonnie his life. But there was another little bit of dialogue
but I still don't understand why Lonnie had to die.
Okay.
I mean, I think I said it myself. They knew that they weren't getting out.
He knew he wasn't getting it. He wasn't going to Yavin. And if it was going to be a miracle to get one person out of there to Yavin, let alone a guy and his whole family. Lonnie was never going to go without his family.
Yeah.
You got a daughter, you got a wife. At least this way, she'll get that imperial pension for Lonnie, the wife and the child.
I don't know. I think the execution squad is going to come looking for his whole family. If I know how the Empire works, they're not getting no pension. Lonnie has been outed. Remember that.
You think they'll take it out on the family?
Hell yeah, they will. Why not? Make an example out of it, and they'll do it publicly to make an example out of any other Imperial.
Well, we do see them mowing down children later in the episode. We see that. So you're right. You're right. There was no happy ending for
There's no
any of the youngs.
Yeah. Even the youngs, they're all going to be smoked. So, but that can happen off screen for all.
Sure.
I don't want to see that. But that was a cool overhead shot of Luthen walking away. He was walking down those stairs. It was kind of a diagonal shot with the shadows. And see, that's what's so brilliant about this show too, is the photography, the cinematography, the beautiful shots. I mean, every part of the show was put together by true pros. None of these quirky auteurs learning on the job how to make a movie, you know. No drafting people from YouTube for this show. They went with the real pros, and it shows.
Yeah, what do people on YouTube know? That's us. All right. So Dedra, there's a line that before he assumes room temperature there, old Lonnie, he says something about Dedra Miro that just jumped out at me, is that she's a rule bender. And, you know, that is something that I hadn't really considered about Dedra. She seems to me the epitome of the fall-in line Imperial. Now, she does back Cyril as this double agent, and she was probably letting some personal feelings and that sort of thing get involved. But I was racking my brain of trying to think of Dedra previous to this episode being what you would call a rule bender. And later we hear Partagaz says that she's prone to overstepping.
That's it.
Do you think it's consistent with the character we've seen so far? Or was this sort of a new coat of paint they were giving her to wrap this up?
She doesn't recognize boundaries when her professional ambitions take over. And we saw her having conflict with that other ISB guy, Blevin, in season 1. She kept stepping all over his toes. And then eventually she outmaneuvered him. And here again, we find her taking... She clearly did not go through proper channels for the raid on Luthen's gallery.
No, she went through no channels. She went there by herself.
Well, she had a squad with her surrounding the place. Remember, she does say that.
She says that, but we didn't see it. And Krennic says you did this by yourself.
Well, those Imperials do rush in, though, really fast after...
yes, that's true. They were there. So, you know, when Krennic says that, he doesn't... Right, you're right. I took that literally. What he meant was she grabbed a garrison and went off without getting any permission from anyone above her. Yes.
Yeah.
Still a ballsy move.
So, So she, you know, her ambitions have created this reputation for her as someone who will go over her superiors' heads and maneuver around roadblocks that she encounters via the bureaucracy of the ISB, but she's found ways to maneuver around all that. And I mean, that gets proven later on when she is called out by Krennic for having files about the Death Star that she was not supposed to have. She said she got them sent to her accidentally or something, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, hey, look, if anyone's worked in a corporate environment, you know that inter-office mail is not perfect. And so occasionally you get something that doesn't belong to you. But the idea is that you say, especially in an environment like the Empire, oh, I'm sorry, this was delivered by mistake. I shouldn't have received this. That's what a reasonably prudent person might do. But Dedra sees that as opportunity. This is opportunity.
Right. Yeah. And so she kept filing that stuff away, thus creating a very... fragile situation for Imperial security, and she works for Imperial security. Meanwhile, others are tapping into her files, notably Lonnie Young, and sharing the information from there with Luthen.
Right. Well, you know, Lonnie Young is... Yeah, I mean, Lonnie Young is really, to Luthen, not much different than that radio console that he starts pouring the chemical on and burns it. He's burning the radio. He's burning Lonnie. And the only person that he can trust at this point, it's still a sacrifice though, is Kleya. So I think at this point, Luthen knows that he's about to make two big sacrifices. One is his own life, the ultimate sacrifice. And two is trusting the fates with Kleya getting back to Coruscant, or excuse me, back to Yavin to deliver this message to the Alliance.
Yeah. It's interesting what a compelling emerging figure Kleya has been throughout this entire series.
Oh, this is huge for her character. Huge.
I mean, after season 1, she was Luthen's assistant to me, and really not someone that I considered a key player in the drama as it was unfolding. Although she did seem like very knowledgeable and capable, it just didn't, I never anticipated her taking so much time in the spotlight in season 2. And her character just keeps steadily emerging until finally in this last arc, via the use of flashbacks, we learn that she is essentially Luthen's daughter.
Yes.
And that's something that we really didn't know.
We didn't know.
It was like there seemed to be a very personal relationship between the two of them. That I understood. And I even considered, maybe this is like a Bill Belichick situation, and Luthen was stooping Clay.
I did too. I thought this was one of those May-December relationships, and he was the silver fox. And it was one of those where, like, I almost felt like you weren't supposed to really ask questions about this. You just, I don't see anything.
Yeah.
But to know that the relationship was very much that, an adopted daughter, for all intents and purposes. Of course, as he says, when it's convenient. Can you imagine saying that to your kid? So am I your daughter? When it's convenient.
But I think
Father of the Year right there.
I think just in the lifestyle that the two were living, it became permanently convenient. I think they were that the relationship was as close as it could have been. And that's why when she had to do the terrible act and pull the plug on Luthen, I was so relieved that the storytellers gave her a moment to kiss him on the forehead and really, say, I love you, Luthen. That's what I was getting, that she loves Luthen, not only for the way he was such a prominent figurehead in her life and took her away from a war-torn planet and possible poverty to living for a purpose, for having a purpose. And she loved him for that. And she loved him, for everything he believed in and everything he taught her. So I was really relieved that they gave her that very in a very fragile moment for her too. I thought, the acting all across the board for this show was superior. I don't even need to say that.
Right.
But I just really felt like, they've done things and they just haven't reacted to some of the terrible things they do. They just she's walking down the hallway. She's just blasting stormtroopers. It felt like a video game. And then she goes in there and immediately just unplugs the machine and watches Luthen take his final breath. And you could think, well, she's going to be cold and just walk out of the room, and because the cause is all that matters, and she needs to get out of there and everything. But there's that tender moment there, which I think the story really needed. And the more we got fed the information via flashbacks about their relationship, the more essential that moment really is. So I loved it. And I just loved how Clea really just kept emerging all the way up until the end, till the very end even. But that was a one hell of a moment. And everything that led up to that in the hospital was really amazing. But again, pardon me, Jason, if I'm getting ahead of our conversation.
No, it's all right. I remember going to see Revenge of the Sith for the very first time. And of course, we all knew we were going to see this incredible battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan. And maybe I just wasn't as full of spoilers or something. I hadn't thought about a showdown between Yoda and Palpatine. And that's where I was with this. I did not think we would ever see these two titans up against each other in that little claustrophobic gallery of Luthens. There was just no escape. He was totally made. He was totally cornered. And the way he plays it is, well, it's Luthen. I would expect nothing less. Did you see this coming, this eventual showdown between these two characters? I just always thought they would sort of, be those passing ships in the night.
Well, I certainly didn't think it was going to happen after the what was it, the second arc when Dedra gets sent to Gorman? Or maybe that's even the first arc. I thought she had been moved away from the Axis. And
Right. She was off the
I didn't
case.
know she'd get a second shot at him. But sure enough, as soon as she got back from Gorman, she started checking into those Axis files again and started sniffing out the trail. And she's good. She's good at what she does. Luthen was able to carry on for many years, hiding right out in the open. Dedra even said she remembers seeing his shop from time to time. Thinking she'd like to pop in. I don't know if she was just blowing smoke or if she was telling the truth. She was impressed at how calm and peaceful it was in there. And then she pulls the big, the shocker moment when she pulls out that Imperial box Cassian stole from Steersguard in season 1. I mean, we're going now. It's cool how it bookends because we're getting references now to the very first episode of Andor. And the thing that really got Dedra going down this trail to begin with is that Imperial box. Still with the seal intact.
Yeah, what I love about that whole thing is that when she asks him about the condition, what do you think? He says, a little damage perhaps, but I'd say it held its value.
Yeah.
And you can't help but think that he's thinking the value was Cassian Andor. That's the value of the Star Path. I'd say it held its value because I got something really great out of it. So I thought there was that was a neat little moment. Symbolism of the Star Path unit.
So many cool moments.
Yeah.
And these guys are kind of like dancing around each other.
Oh, I wanted it to continue. The only thing I was like, no, I don't want her to take the mask off yet. I don't want the pretenses to end. I love this dance that they're doing.
Yeah.
Especially when she talks about the forgeries. Are there forgeries?
Yeah.
And he says only two things here that essentially may not be real. And I know he's referring to himself and her.
Yeah.
Because he's a phony, and he later points out that she's a phony. She's scared is what she is. And he senses that she's terrified. She's not the confident woman that she pretends to be. He sees right through her and what she is. And I love it. I love it that he's outthinking her at this point.
He does provide interesting narration to the scene as it's unfolding.
Yes.
When he shows her the knife, the Nautilin bleeder, he calls it, and says it's a ceremonial Nautilin. The Nautilins are the Kit Fistos. And so Tetra says, is it real? And Luthen goes, we still don't know. The tension mounts.
Yes.
Meaning, can it make him bleed is what he's thinking.
Yes.
He's like, it was almost like he's narrating the scene between the two of them. Is it real? We still don't know. The tension mounts. Meaning we're going to find out in just a few minutes if it's going to live up to its name and really be the Nautilin bleeder it's supposed to be. That's when the masks come off.
Sure.
Dedra, though, then, she opens up the box, shows Luthen the thing, and says she'd been dreaming about that moment. And I just loved, it was so in her character with that scowl on her face. You disgust me.
Yeah.
Man, that was delicious.
It was. Yeah. It was. The gloves were off. And he says there's a whole galaxy out there just waiting to disgust you. But this, when he says that, she says, and here you were all the time, under our nose, hiding in the shelter of Imperial peace and quiet. And he goes, and I've known you all along. Hardly seems fair. I couldn't help but think about, you have Cassian, who had no idea who it is that's hunting him. You have Dedra, who has no idea who she's hunting. You have Luthen, who knows everything about who's hunting him in Dedra, and you had Cyril, who knows everything about who he's hunting, Cassian. So it's this incredible cat and mouse thing that we see with all these characters. And I love the way they sort of reflect and refract each other at different places. It's Jim, I think you can sort of boil all this down as it's amazing what kind of story you can tell when you plan it all out in advance. And all of the behind the scenes stories that we've heard from the writers and Tony Gilroy himself is that they mapped this whole thing out very carefully and then broke it up into smaller chunks and, you know, the rest. But the point is, Tony had the Bible for this story, where it was going to go from beginning to end, and everything else was between him and the writers. But there was a plan. This kind of getting all the dominoes, all the chess pieces, whatever you want to call it, in the right place. This doesn't happen by accident. This is no relay race here. This was absolutely planned brilliantly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you, like I said, you're getting in this final arc, you're getting callbacks to the very first season. There's really no throwaway scenes or filler in any single minute of this entire show. And if somebody would like to present me with something they think is filler, I bet you and me, Jason, could connect the dots and show them, no, this pays off. And that's what I love the most, is everything pays off. Everything gets set up to get knocked down sometimes, but the characters all earn the situations they find themselves in. There's logical progression in the way the narrative unfolds, and anything that happens can be explained just by watching what happens, as opposed to this, oh, it's that way just because.
Right.
Which Star Wars, unfortunately, has fallen back to quite a bit. I mean, you know, the Ahsoka series was nothing but just because. Why is it that way? Oh, just because. The Acolyte, a lot of that was, oh, well, you know, just because. No, just because. We want to connect the dots. We want the dominoes to fall. We want to play dominoes with Andor, Melshi, and K2. These are the things we want as fans.
Dude, I was thinking that the whole time. I was like, you know, there's not a whole lot of moments in Star Wars where I go, boy, I wish I was there. But
yes,
did I wish I was there on Yavin playing dominoes with Cassian and Melchi and K2 and drinking a beer? I didn't even mind that it clearly looked like a beer that Cassian was drinking. I was very caught up in the moment and loved it.
It seemed like there was a vibe.
Yeah,
there was a vibe in that room, you know. The only thing it was missing, Swank, was the cigar smoke. I mean, really.
And I have this idea, Jim, that's for the most part been the last year of Cassian's life. I feel as though Cassian has spent a year getting over Bix, training K2, getting him up to speed, making him very, very useful. Not that he's been on the sidelines. I don't want to say that. I think he's been obviously doing missions and stuff, but he's so at ease and so at home, you know, with Melshi and with K2, that I just really believe that it was emblematic of what the last year in his life has been. And I'm happy that he had maybe a year of a little bit of tranquil moments here and there.
Oh, I think there were a lot of tranquil moments because K2 mentioned that they played 863 domino games. So if only a year has gone by, I mean, just do the math. That's you know, like 2.5 domino games a day for every day of the year. So they're playing a lot of dominoes. Life is a drag on Yavin. They're killing time while they're building up their resources, basically. And Willman's there, and he's got Drina, and they got their happy life together and stuff. He seems to be the most fulfilled out of all the rebels, is Willman.
He really does. He really does.
Even though he's a puffer as well, just like Saw. But maybe that's why he's so relaxed.
Could be. Or he's kicked the habit. He does have a limp now. Has he always had that limp since the season 1? I don't know why I seem to notice it this arc.
No, remember he was injured in the Ferrix uprising.
Right.
In the season finale, they had to carry him to the ship and everything. So yeah,
So he's
he
had
was
that
injured.
injury for a while. I just noticed the limp. But yeah, I just real quick going back to the standoff here. Saw does use the Nautilin bleeder, and he mentions that it's Luthen. Sorry, gosh,
Yeah.
Saw. Luthen uses it, and he mentions at some point that it was, maybe ceremonial. And so I thought that was very, very fitting. It's no accident that that was the artifact that he chose to show Dedra in their conversation. He wasn't picking up, I don't know, what do you got in there? Like a Padme headdress or anything like that. I mean, it was very specific. And there was a moment when I thought that, oh, is this a defensive move?
Me too.
But he knew the jig was up. And he also had more work to do in burning the radio and stuff. He wasn't finished with all that.
Right. I thought it was ballsy for him to hand it to Dedra. I was like, ooh, he's handing her a weapon. But I think she had her sidearm with her. I don't recall, but.
Oh, yeah, she did, because she pulls it on him when he and says, turn around, turn around.
Right. That's right. So, yeah, who cares that she was holding a knife? But I mean,
yeah,
that's the confidence he had in the situation. He knew he'd get that knife back, and he knew he'd get a chance to use it. Remember, the Klingons had a similar ritual with the knives, and then there's that carry thing that the samurai do.
Seppuku. Harry Kiri. It was you would take the honorable way out as opposed to that's exactly what Luthen does, the ultimate sacrifice.
He knows that the Imperial interrogation techniques are brutal, and he will start talking. There's no way to not, they're going to break him. He just knows it. And so he puts his money where his mouth is and takes his life for the cause. Almost.
And that, of course, leads to an incredible task set before Clea. I can't imagine that Saul would be happy about this at all, that he put Clea in that position. I think he would see that as a failure on his part.
Luthen.
What do I keep saying, Saw?
You keep saying Saw. I know. Too many rebel psychopaths to keep track of.
What is wrong with me? You got Saw on the brain. But I see he gets put on life support and gets taken off to the hospital. And Dedra, her reaction to this stuff, Jim, ever since we see her react to potentially losing Cyril and the way the Gorman massacre went down, she just collapses. She is not, I don't think, or maybe she never was. Maybe she never was the epitome of Imperial strength and fortitude. She's and Luthen calls her out on it. He says that you're terrified, and she is. We see it throughout. Now they're terrifying circumstances. I don't know. I'd be as brave as her, but relatively speaking,
she's not the best field agent, I would say. I think she should be behind a desk doing bureaucratic things or conducting her investigations in more of the cyber world than actually strapping on the blaster, putting on the boots, and going out to where the battle is, because we saw what happened on Ferrix. She got knocked down, got her blaster kicked away, and she probably would have been trampled to death if it wasn't for Cyril.
Mm-hmm.
Then we saw what happened at the Battle of Gorman. There's been a lot of debating about, between you and me primarily, I guess, between why she had that mental meltdown when she was in that private comms room and her hand was all shaking and stuff. I still think it's primarily the death of Cyril, but a lot of people do think that she was shaken from the conflict. Maybe just the sheer scale of the violence and the chaos that ensued just showed she doesn't necessarily have the fortitude to be there in the moment. But I will dispute with anyone who says that she was feeling guilty for what happened on Gorman, or felt bad about the people being displaced or the chaos and the violence that went down. See, some people were applying that to her, and I dispute that, because this is a character that never once has shown an ounce of compassion for anything or anybody. All she cares about is her career and the Empire. So why would she suddenly start like having to suffer from guilt for what happened to Gorman? She does not care.
I agree with you 100%, Jim, and I think I might even have been one to suggest that in that moment. But this episode and the way she lives out her actions here, I don't think guilt is a word that she even knows. I think it's not an emotion she's capable of.
No, her only guilt she feels is if she lets the Empire down in some way,
right? Fails
her superiors, and she really finds out, what it means to fail your superiors in the Empire, especially old Krennic.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the chaos. You mentioned chaos. Let's talk a little bit about the chaos at ISB. Oh, poor Partagaz. There's a part of me that actually feels a little sorry for this dude. But, so here's the chaos at ISB. You've got Dedra overstepping. Lonnie's dead and a traitor. Krennic is breathing down all of their necks because they haven't protected this planet-sized or moon-sized weapon. and Partagaz even says, well, how long do you think we could keep this a secret? You're late on the project, by the way, buddy. So we've been doing our best to keep your moon-sized weapon that requires the complete destruction of multiple systems and planets in order to make the damn thing. I think we've been doing a pretty good job. I'm paraphrasing, of course, Partagaz, but I feel for the guy. You've got Hearst. This guy is grasping at anything, everything, even going so far and being so desperate to ask Dedra for advice after he's the one that arrests her.
I was a little surprised by that, because I thought he was more of a Dedra loyalist. He was her assistant in season 1. Yeah. And she showed him the ropes, and, he covered for her numerous times. But again, the ambition, ambition. And I guess she had just stepped on too many toes and went over too many heads at this point, and Hirt saw the opportunity. Dedra thought it was maybe because the fact that Lonnie Young was murdered that's why Hirt then brought the hammer down on Dedra. But actually it was Partagaz who wanted Dedra brought in, and she just ordered Hirt to bring her in.
Yes.
So we do have to keep that in mind. Hirt is just following orders too.
That is true.
It's not his call. He does say that Partagaz had sent him.
He certainly does seem to take pleasure, it seems like, during the arrest of Dedra. But he's a snake. He's a snake. And whether or not it was his idea or he's just following orders, I'm sure that he didn't lose any sleep over arresting Dedra. You also have the colossal failure of the TAC teams at the safe house, which we'll talk about later, and the failure of the security forces at the hospital and protecting Luthen. So, Jim, it's just failure, despite this seemingly incredibly tight ship that Partagaz and others like him try and maintain. So ironic that this tyrannical force that is all about order and so anti-chaos is themselves falling into chaos.
Well, a lot could be taken from Nemec's audio manifesto that Partagaz is listening to in his final moments. And in it, Nemec says that this level of tyranny and oppression is almost impossible to maintain. Yeah. And as he's saying those words, Partagaz is thinking to himself, Well, I'll be damned. The voice on this recording is really telling the truth because I'm in a pickle right now. A pickle. What did Tony Gilroy put that line in there? Well, you sure are in a pickle there, Partagas. Oh, man. Or yeah, Krennic says to him, Leo, I'm afraid there's nothing I can do to help you. You're in quite the pickle right now.
It wouldn't have quite have had the same brilliant writer ring to it that other lines have had. We don't hear enough about pickles in Star Wars, but there are plenty of them.
There has to be.
Yeah. So
Barrel
ISB
of
really
pickle somewhere.
Yeah, ISB really falling apart. And there's got to be a part of Krennic that is all too happy to lay all this failure at the feet of the ISB, because that takes some of the heat off of him for being so late with the Death Star. And, you know, he's not in, we see very in Rogue One that he's not necessarily everyone's favorite. He's not Tarkin's favorite. Tarkin takes the project away from him. He's certainly not Vader's favorite. So I think he's all too happy to let Partagas take the blame for a lot of this.
There had to be a fall guy.
Yes.
And it's because Krennic looks bad because of this whole situation. And on top of that, you're pointing out the Death Star and the delays with that. That also might be applying a lot of political pressure on Krennic. Because he's like the head of the ISB. And well, maybe it's that other one from Clone Wars, Yularen. But I don't know. Yularen he's been kept in the dark about the Death Star and everything. They mentioned at some point that he had just found out about the Death Star weeks prior. Whereas the Death Star project's been going on for like a couple of decades now. Yeah,
it does seem like that maybe Partagas hadn't heard the name of it until recently. He knew that they were protecting the secret of some sort of super weapon, but he sort of throws that little dig at Krennic and he says, Death Star, how prescient.
well, yeah. But prescient for his situation, which was death.
Yeah.
The Death Star bringing death, even though it's not fully operational yet. Imperial heads are rolling because the word is out there about it. There's a leak, And
Krennic even calls it a death march. He says the ISB death march. So he threatens Hearst and says, either you find this woman, Clea, who's our last link to the intelligence that leaked, or you will also be part of the ISB death march. So they all know. Right. They all know that their days are numbered.
Well, it sure seems like they know somebody's going to have to take the fall. Partagas is the obvious guy, clearly, and Dedra. Dedra went around, she worked outside the system. And that can't happen in an empire built on justice and order. Justice and order with an iron fist. So if people on the inside are completely blowing that off, then that's the hammer has to come down on them. So Dedra ends up on program, and Partagas is going to be put in front of a firing squad, but he takes that option off the table and becomes his own firing squad because he knows what's going to happen. He has to take the hit for it because he was supervisor of Lonnie Young and Dedra Mira. So he knew
the Empire's biggest secret leaked out under his watch.
So he had to pay the price, the ultimate price. And it wasn't going to be Krennic.
No.
Krennic will throw everyone under the bus. That's why he said he couldn't help him. Leo, I can't help you.
Yeah.
And when he called him Leo, it's like, wow, there's a history between these two guys. They're like peers, possibly
maybe came
friends.
Up together.
Yeah, right. I mean, because that was like the most human moment we got from Krennic. Just that one brief time when he just like kind of became himself, like was a human being for half a second.
Yeah.
Leo, there's nothing I can do. I can't help you out here, Leo. You're screwed, man. and Leo knows, and when Krennic leaves Partagas, he looks back and he knows this is the last time I'm going to ever be seeing this guy.
Yeah.
This is the last time. Either he does it or they're going to do it.
And you have to be okay with that. And I mean, to become a guy like a Tarkin or a Krennic, you know, we talk an awful lot about the price that you pay for the rebellion, the cause. It's even a bigger cost. It's the cost of your soul that you pay to become a Krennic or a Tarkin or somebody. And I'm not trying to look at them as victims, but at least you are with the rebellion. Yes, you're fighting for a cause. You may have to compromise your principles, but it is for the greater good. Not the case with the Empire, though every villain sees themselves as the hero in their own story. I get that. But I do want to talk a little bit about the backstory of Kleya and Luthen. So, Jim, how old would you say Kleya is? 25, mid-20s?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. So he discovers her when she's 6-7 years old, perhaps. So this would make it around 17, 18 BBY. And you and I speculated on a previous episode about Luthen's background, and we thought, yes, he definitely comes from a military background, and we find out here that he was a general. He was a general. Sergeant Lear, of course, which is the, you take rail, spell it backwards, you get Lear, as in King Lear.
Yeah,
no relation.
Yeah. You know, I wasn't really catching that they were calling him Lear. It's sort of in the background. So when I watched on my second viewing, I did have those very handy closed caption words at the bottom there, and it was translating everything everyone was saying. Like when Luthen was drinking from the flask, saying "Make it stop," he also spoke in his native tongue, and we were hearing him say "Make it stop" in some language. He was saying "Rosh ne Lutz." Roshne Lutz. It sounds almost Klingon. Roshne Lutz. And he finds the kid. But you're right. Yeah, Rail is Lear backwards. I was like, oh, his name's Lear. I was like,
which
that's
is kind
really
of
interesting.
A little Star Warsy thing, isn't that sort of? Well, we'll take the last name, and we'll, Jorg Sakul. It's an anagram, or it's just literally backwards. So they kind of did it in universe.
Right. And it's kind of a nice alias, just showing how he turned his whole life inside out and backwards. So Rail is Lear backwards. And of course, Nettle is Luthen backwards, which doesn't really come into play at all. But Swank is Naws backwards. The K is silent.
Yeah.
The K is silent. Naws.
You remember there's a moment, though, where Luthen is talking to Cassian about how Cassian was special, and he was there when he needed him. All these different moments, these key moments that Cassian was there.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think that the same is true to some degree with Kleya, because is it just a coincidence that he's having this complete emotional break during the heat of battle, and you have this little stowaway, this little 6-7-year-old girl that gives him what he later says, what he never thought he would have, which would be a choice. He sees, I think, the girl as his moment to make a choice. And he makes the choice. He stays back, hides her, and obviously goes AWOL and escapes and becomes a fugitive on the run. And I thought the whole, and they do it so quickly, but so effectively, no wasted time with this show, and how they show how he becomes an antique dealer, and it makes total sense. It's untraceable. You're pawning items. There's no paperwork. It's probably dealing a lot in cash. So, I think you can see the wheels start to turn, and what a great way to make a living, because it's virtually untraceable. You're dealing with very, very old items that are found, and probably a lot of the things are procured by thieves, and so it's just his whole backstory, and his backstory with Kleya, I thought was very satisfying and made a ton of sense.
Yeah. It gave us all the information we needed to know about Luthen. He served in the Empire as a sergeant. And I just wonder who they were fighting, because at this point in time, the Clone Wars had ended. So it must have just been some like local flare up or something, or they were hunting out local insurgencies, because they talk about, we smoked out 50 of them from one of the basements. That's what the soldier comes in and says to Luthen, and there's no real backstory about that. So I thought, wow, Luthen, the ultimate rebel, the king of all rebels, was actually serving the Empire and hunting rebels himself at one point.
Yeah. Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's why Lear becomes Real. It's a total 180.
Yeah, there's one chilling line that comes across the radio. It says, there's nothing left to kill. So they're just doing absolute, complete devastation and wiping out whatever population this is, or whatever city or settlement this is. So definitely the huge fist of the Empire is coming down heavily.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't seen, I know there's probably speculation out there. I don't think that there's any clues or signals as to what planet they're on in that instance. Later, we see them on Naboo. At least I assume it's right. Naboo.
No, it does get identified as Naboo.
Oh, great.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah. But the other planets, we don't know what this planet Sergeant Lear is on with his troops, and nor the planets that Luthen and Kleia are on when they're selling their antiquities and trinkets. And then that's when Kleia witnesses the Imperial public execution of a group of people, citizens, including a boy about her age, which was pretty chilling.
Yes.
And that really starts stoking the flames of rebellion in her. When do we start fighting back? And Luthen teaches her about discipline, patience, and waiting for the time when the time is right, bottling up the emotion until it's the right time to unleash it. And when he says move, you move.
Right.
Those are important rules to know.
But despite the fact that he's sort of this 1950s tough love sort of dad, which is sort of what I liken Luthen to be, he doesn't want her to
Luthen knows best.
Yes,
I love that show.
Absolutely.
Luthen knows best.
That's right. Dads out there, you could learn a thing from Luthen. What he doesn't want to see, or is he doesn't want her to see that execution. And then later we see her and him on Naboo, and there's a setup like it's a test to test her will to do the things that need to be done. And he takes that choice away from her. So he first attempts to not allow her to see this execution. And then he takes the chance away from her to do what she thinks he wants her to do, which is to push the button on the detonator and blow up that bridge. And he takes it back.
Right.
Why?
Why do you think Luthen didn't? He refused to let her see the execution. Why do you think he did not want that?
I think that it might have just been a human moment. Maybe Luthen didn't want to watch the execution. He'd seen enough. So he doesn't grab her and remove her. He just says, you're on your own. I'm out of here. I'm not watching it. So maybe it was more Luthen's decision than it was making a decision for her. Because he doesn't really make an attempt to abandon her.
I have a theory. It's just a theory now.
Mm-hmm.
I have a theory. I mean, it's as valid as whatever you're saying here.
Right.
My theory is that he had sensed the hate and the rage within her through experience with her. You know, he knew that she was what she was feeling. He understood the anger and how she couldn't tolerate seeing something as unjust as a public execution that's going down without any due process, without any warrants or anything. I mean, what did the guy say? Trooper ate a bolt the other night, sniper, and they keep finding people who did it.
Right.
How many snipers were there? See, they're just using it as an excuse, and it might even be something that had been orchestrated by the ISB, as we've seen their want to do. Gorman, anyone? So they're just looking for excuses to create criminals and to kill people. And I think Luthen believed if Clea is going to witness this, there is a chance that she might just see red, go into a blind rage, lose it, start throwing rocks at the troopers or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And get hauled away. And that's why he's like, all right, you're on your own, kid. Because he felt like maybe he recognizes she's young, she's immature, she doesn't have the experience nor discipline to control that fire that's building inside her. And Luthen was worried that if she witnessed this kind of atrocity, carried out by the Empire in public, that she might start openly revolting. Start throwing things. How tough is that to do? So, and then she'd get taken away. And Luthen, if he sticks around, that makes him vulnerable as well. So now Clea's a liability in Luthen's mind as he's walking away. And he would have kept walking. She caught up to him, clearly. Yeah. But maybe he was shuffling a little. I don't know. I don't think he was going to turn back and walk back there to see where she was. I think he was out of there, and that was that. You're on your own, and he meant it.
Yes. But then we have the scene. I like your theory a lot, Jim. I do. We have the scene on Naboo when he thinks or she thinks that she's doing what he wants of her, and is about to take the detonator, and he doesn't let her do it. And can I give you my theory on that?
Yeah.
My theory on the bridge is that we don't really see, now correct me if I'm wrong, up until this episode, we see Clea doing a lot of espionage. We see Clea handling a lot of intelligence, listening on radio, organizing things. We don't see her taking a blaster and going into battle. Up to this point,
I don't think we don't ever see her. No.
So I think that he doesn't want that for her. He wants her to be capable of it. So she's exposed to it. She's surrounded by it. And when he says it's time to move, but I don't think that he wants her getting her hands quite that dirty. And I believe that's when he pulls that detonator away from her, because I think that's when he makes that decision for himself. And he kind of passes it off as a joke. I lie. Get used to it. I lie. That's what we do. But I do think that there is a reason why we don't see her getting her hands really dirty until this episode, when she goes to take the final act, which is killing Luthen, essentially killing Luthen, taking him off life support.
I like all of that. And I'd also like to add, on top of that, considering her age, her inexperience, and lack of discipline still, maybe Luthen didn't think she was equipped psychologically enough to be able to handle the guilt of doing something like that, having the blood on her hands at such a young age. But at the same time, like you said, showing her it, callousing her soul a little bit. So in the future, she would be able to hit that detonator when the time is right. She doesn't have to do it now, not with Luthen around, but there may come a day when she will have to do it. And that's what we see in the hospital. When I still don't understand how she planted those. Oh, wait a second. I keep screwing that up. I keep thinking that she set the explosives in the hospital, but she set them in the building across the street.
Right.
Or the landing pad where the Imperials were parking their transports. Yeah, I keep thinking that those explosives went off in the hospital, but the explosives going off allow her to just walk right past the troopers as they're running in the other direction because there's a crisis at hand, and so they don't even notice her in the hospital. By the way, this is the first time we are seeing a hospital in Star Wars. We've seen like med bays and medical facilities at rebel bases and back to tanks, but this is the very first time we're actually seeing a Star Wars hospital. And the name of the place is the Imperial Medical Facility. It's an unpopular name amongst the people on Coruscant. They had a contest to name the hospital. This is some behind the scenes stuff.
Oh, okay.
Some of the names, because they settled on Imperial Medical Facility, but they had this contest, and so I have the runners up here. The names that didn't quite make it.
This is quite a scoop.
The fourth
we have
runner up.
here.
This is a scoop. Yeah.
This
is exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth runner up is the Elan Sleesbagano Memorial Hospital. That was the fourth runner. Third runner up was Dex's Diner in Healthcare. So it's Dex's Diner, letter N and an apostrophe, healthcare.
Well, with Dex's Cooking, you need that hospital right next to it. So it's one-stop shop for you.
Well, yeah. You can have your meal and get your stomach pumped in the same place. The second runner-up, back to R Us. Back to R Us. Yeah. I'm surprised that didn't win. I didn't win. And the first runner-up, the Kitster Clinic.
Oh, now that's the winner. That's the winner.
That's
right
no. Thousands of people entered this contest.
Wow.
But the place was named Imperial Medical Facility. That winning suggestion came from the Emperor himself. And all the runners up.
He wasn't feeling too creative that day, by the way, Palpatine. They didn't catch him in the morning.
He thought that was gold. He wrote that down and went gold. Imperial Medical Facility.
Wow.
Says it all.
Boy.
And so he won the
department.
contest. All the runners up were executed in the town square of their hometown. So that was it. First live action Star Wars hospital, the Imperial Medical Facility, until named otherwise.
Well, by the way, this is a call-in program, and we are going to at least let you get in the queue. If you want to talk to us on the show, the number to call, 708-866-1737. Our buddy Tyler Page is all ready and willing to take the calls. And able, Tyler, I get a thumb up here from you. Everything good? All right. Tyler gives us the thumbs up. Everything is good. So give us a call, 708-866-1737.
Tyler's in a great mood because we went to Star Wars Day at the White Sox game, and it was May the 4th be with you, that Sunday. And Tyler took a picture with White Sox mascot Southpaw, who was dressed up as Yoda. And Tyler ended up on Southpaw's Instagram.
Oh, look at
There
this.
it is.
Wow. Tyler.
Dude. Southpaw. Typically, he doesn't have those Yoda ears, Southpaw. But he is green. And, boy, he and Tyler, they hit it off like best buddies. Southpaw climbed over seats just to get to Tyler.
And
I was sitting there. What's that, Ty?
He kicked the guy out behind me, the schmuck.
Oh, that guy was a schmuck.
Wait a minute. The mascot is kicking people out of the ballpark? Is that what was going on? Wow.
Just to get a photo with me. And I was pretty happy about that.
Wow. Just to get a photo with you. All right. Well, I love it. Congratulations. That's awesome. And to be on their official Instagram feed, how cool is that? That's very cool.
Highlight of my life. Yeah.
Highlight. You're like Cyril after he gets the compliment from Partagaz. Is this the greatest day of my life? Is it okay if I tell you this is the greatest day of my life? Well, you deserve it, buddy. Thank you so much. And I will let you get back to screening calls. Looks like we have several in the queue. So away you go and doing your duty. But okay, we got to talk about Krennic and Dedra. And I want to start this off by just saying, and I know we got a lot of fans out there of Grand Admiral Thrawn, but I just have to make this comparison. that Orson Krennic is 1,000 times more menacing and scary than Grand Admiral Thrawn on his worst day. And I'm talking live action Thrawn. I'm talking animation Thrawn. It doesn't matter. This guy scares the bejesus out of me. And I thought he was creepy in Rogue One years ago when I saw it, but that is nothing to the terror and the chills that go up and down my spine when this guy walks into a room. He out Dedra's Dedra. And she is, what did you call her, Jim? The queen of scowls?
Yeah, the queen of all scowls. Yeah.
But man, oh man, does he give her what for? And it's an amazing thing to watch because everything, Jim, that we've seen Dedra do over the course of this series seems to be turned around on her so fast. Right. I hate to say it because I think she's a very capable officer and really good at what she does. She is no match for Krennic. He's smarter. Okay. He's more ruthless. Like I say, he out Dedra 10-1. And she starts throwing people under the bus. That was so great. She's like, well, what about Legret's brother? What about Hirt? What about Young? She just starts throwing names at Krennic, and it doesn't cut any ice with him. He's not even there. He's not there to bargain with her. He's not there to give her a slap on the wrist and then put her back out into the field. This is it. This is her sentencing, essentially. Yeah. And he finds her guilty on all counts. And unlike Dedra, you had Clea, who was also an orphan. They're both orphaned characters. But there's one cause worth fighting for, and that's Clea's. And they have her back in the end. We see Cassian at the end of the day. We see even Draven, who gives the order to let the medics come and attend to her, that despite the rift and the disagreements that they have with Luthen and his ilk, they have Clea's back. And they nurse her back to health. And Vel's there and Cassian's there. Who does Dedra have for her cause? No one. Not a single person sticks up for her. The people that were praising her just a couple years ago or a year ago, however you want to do the math, in our world last week, are nowhere to be found. She's garbage.
Yeah. She did have a fast rising star attached to her. But I think at the end of the day, poor Dedra's just in over her head. She's way over her skis, if you will. She's swimming with sharks and probably getting outclassed by a different league of evil Imperial. She thought she knew ambition. She thought she knew professional drive and things like that. It's nothing compared to a force like Krennic. Krennic, you say, more intimidating than Grand Admiral Thrawn? Well, Jason. That's all by design, of course. It was meant to be that way. All part of the plan. So we got Thrawn coming up. Thrawn's got blue skin. He doesn't need to be menacing. He's got blue skin and red eyes. That's menacing enough for me. But Krennic, I don't think ever came off is more menacing and more intimidating than he does in this scene with Dedra. When he puts that finger on her head from behind and she's like, oh no. He turns the camera.
Somebody do that to you?
Hey, dude, I went to 12 years of Catholic school. Are you kidding me?
Oh, you got a permanent dent probably on the top of that head.
Yeah. That was finger on the head day was Wednesday. That's what I called it. It was something. I was expecting more actually than a finger on the head and some like real close talk because Krennic turned off the security cameras before he walked in that room.
Oh yeah,
so I thought
like Jeffrey Epstein stuff right there.
Yeah, well, I thought at the very least he'd pull a Sipowicz and smack her on the back of the skull with a phone book or something, like the New York City phone book, a real fat one. But no, nothing like that.
Well, he does get a little physical with her.
Well, yeah, he grabs her face. Yeah, he does do that. But I mean, come on. That's for an Imperial. That's nothing. I thought he'd call in Dr. Ball at least. But but no, he's pure intimidation. I really, really enjoyed it. His reputation clearly has taken a hit because the Death Star information got leaked. And so he's desperately trying to find a solution. But Krennic does have the comforts and insulation of knowing that there are those underneath him who can take the hit. And Dedra is one of them. Partagaz is the other one. Great acting in this scene. I'm not even going to say that about the acting in the show. Every scene, every actor, the direction, the writing, the acting, it's all on a standard set way higher than anything we've seen from Disney Star Wars up to this point. And as a matter of fact, watching some Disney Star Wars after seeing 2 seasons of Andor is going to be a real cringy chore in some cases. I'm saying, and I think the cases depend on the fan, really. But how do you go back to some of the stuff we've been served after getting this, this richness in storytelling, narration across the board with acting, technical stuff, directing, writing, cinematography, everything.
Well, Jon Favreau has got a big act to follow because the next thing we're going to see is The Mandalorian and Grogu.
That movie, that's the next live action on the slate. And then Ahsoka season 2,
right?
Which is talking a big game right now. Hey, quick, brief, get away from Andor for a second.
Sure.
I've really come to the conclusion that the Dave Filoni Mandalorian era conclusion film, I really don't think that's going to happen. Not anytime in the next decade. And I'll tell you why. Because remember, he was brought out there at Star Wars Celebration London in 2023 when they said they got the James Mangold film, they got the Daisy Ridley film, and they got a Dave Filoni thing that's going to tie it all together, whatever they said.
Right.
Well, we know that those announcements were kind of made out of desperation because they didn't have anything really big to present the audience, anything real to present the audience. And as we know, those 3 things have never even seen a heartbeat up to this point. I am kind of excited for the Mangold thing because Bo Willimon from Andor is one of the writers on the script.
Not too shabby.
Mangold. No. So I hope that's progressing, but we've heard nothing about it. And so I really don't think that Filoni film is going to happen anytime soon. There was no mention of it at Star Wars Celebration Japan a few weeks ago. No mention of it. And you'd think that movie would have been this big war with Grand Admiral Thrawn. But they said the Ahsoka series, season 2, that's going to be half the season is a war with Thrawn. I thought that's where this was all going.
Akbar v. Thrawn.
I don't think Dave is going to be sitting in the director's chair for a feature film anytime soon. I think he's got enough to do on his plate. He's the creative officer, the chief creative officer of all Star Wars. And that probably puts so much on his plate. How would he be able to step away and work on a feature film? I mean, that really consumes a director during the shoot, preparing for the shoot, during the shoot, after the shoot, the editing process, everything. That takes a couple of years. How are you going to run Star Wars and do that? Me and Jason are here if you need any help,
sure.
Filoni. You know how to get a hold
Let me
of
see.
us.
My phone's not ringing. No texts, no emails. But
I still got a
just
phone
a matter
number
of
for
time.
Dave Filoni here. I'm sure is good. Maybe I should just call him. Wouldn't that be a hoot?
Call him right now.
Who is it? No,
Yeah.
I can't. I'm not going to. I'll just put my phone down. Because there's a brief
number.
moment when I was almost going to do it.
Oh, I'm sure it's a blocked number anyway. All right. So I do want before we say goodbye to Dedra and Krennic here. I got to ask the question, and we'll throw this out obviously to our callers as well, but I want to throw it out to you, Jim. Is there a part of you? Is there a partagast of you that feels sorry at all for Dedra Miro?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I do have a sense of sympathy for her because we've been with her through this whole crazy thing. And I firmly believe that her heart was in the right place for an Imperial. I think she was trying to do the right thing. She was trying to smoke out this Axis guy who was causing all kind of problems for the Empire. And she was using every tool at her resource.
Scavenging.
She had scavenging. Yeah, she says she's a scavenger. She knows how to sniff out a lead. She knows she's good at what she does. And I think she's a very loyal Imperial. I don't think she ever intended for, it was just her sloppiness, keeping those files.
Yeah.
And the knowledge that she had knowledge of things that were maybe classified, very classified.
Definitely
to a person
classified.
like her. Yeah, well, definitely classified. But I mean, she says she had clearance for the Gorman information, but that was really it. When it came down to these files from Jedha,
yes,
Krennic seemed very interested in, and she had like 2 years of those Jedha files, and that was the real red flag that that has eventually ends up putting Dedra in the prison. But she was just doing things, I firmly believe, in her heart. She was trying to do the right thing for the Empire. Yeah.
And so you do have a little pity for her. Yeah.
So in that way, yeah, I feel a little, because we already talked last week about how she grew up in the Imperial kinder care, as they call it.
Right.
And a lot of people question, well, how could that be possible? The Empire's only been around for 18 years up to this point. That means she's only, she can't be older than 20 right now. She's clearly like almost 40. But, I think that she was placed in that care facility when it was still the Republic. And, maybe she grew up in there, maybe when she was like 10 or something, the Empire came to control the galaxy. And then they just started calling it an Imperial kinder care. She wasn't going to say, well, first it was a Republic kindergarten, and then the Empire took over and it became an Imperial kinder care. No, she just calls it the name it's currently called,
What do they have, junior highs, or do they have middle schools there? Hey, by the way,
it'd be like us. It would be like us talking about the Force cast still, like,
come on.
No,
Right.
we just say
Move on.
Rebel Force Radio and leave it at that. Even when we're talking about our days with the Force cast, to me, that's Rebel Force Radio.
Right.
So,
now, Matt is on the line. Matt is, Jim, he disagrees. He has no compassion for Dedra. So, Matt, you have no pity?
None at all. None at all. No, she had it coming. I hope she gets, zapped to the floor of that prison like they did on those Narkina episodes in season 1 over and over again.
Yeah.
All the Gorman blood is on her hands. She could have course corrected after that massacre. She didn't. So she's got it coming as far as I'm concerned.
Wow. Matt is harsh. Matt, you're from Chicago as well.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I actually was on Q&A number 8 with Jimmy Mack a long time ago. Long time listener.
All right.
Oh,
Yes, I see. Yeah, Matt, you are a Patreon first time caller, but a long time Patreon. It's good to have you on the show.
Sir.
So you'd like to see those zaps going through her feet there in the prison, and I got to hand it to Partagas when I saw him. He wasn't going to go to no prison. He was going to make sure. I mean, maybe he was avoiding execution. I don't know. He might have been. I think they need bodies to build the pieces and parts of that Death Star more than they need to be executing people. And actually, I would rather be executed than I would be on one of those prison planets. And that's exactly where Dedra finds herself.
Yeah, definitely. And I was going to ask you guys, Partagas, he almost seemed kind of like, interested in that Nemec speech that he was listening. He had like a glisten in his eye, almost like he was almost jealous or something. I don't know. It was weird. What did you guys think of that?
well, I think he is playing it back and feeling a little stunned at how accurate the things that Nemec is saying. And, he's looking from the inside out too. And he's hearing what Nemec is saying about how running a tyrannical empire, an oppressive government, it's unnatural. And so it's very difficult to maintain. And it almost inevitably will crash and burn. And Partagas is like, oh yeah, I get that part, because he sees how difficult it is to maintain. It's a lot of Partagas's own making too. In many ways, Partagas made his own bed, and I'll tell you why. It's because when they were at the safe house, they were desperately trying to call for backup, but there were no squads available because everyone was hunting down Clea under the disease.
The Center for Disease Control was out.
The disease control.
For Clea.
And that spin was created by Partagas himself. So by creating that BS story, he basically left himself standing there with no clothes on. I mean, there was no help to be had when they needed it the most. And then Cassian and Clea, if they got Clea, I think Partagas may have survived. That may have redeemed him if they could have brought in Clea. That was really his last hope. And they blew it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, thanks for the call,
guys.
man.
Yeah,
appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah. Hey, thanks.
Yeah, have a good
my
one.
twin sons, Liam and Martin, my twin sons.
Yay.
Get it? Twin sons.
I love
Actually,
it.
I have twin sons. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I love it.
Guys.
Thank you. All right, there goes.
Thanks, Matt.
There goes Matt.
I know Matt.
Yeah, Matt. Let's see. What
Yeah,
else
he
we
came
got?
over and hung out with me at Galloping Ghost one day, and then we went out for some adult beverages. Good guy, real good guy. Yeah.
Let's check in with the super chats before they get too far away from us here this week. This is from Cosmic Star Wars 34T69 says, Dedra going alone to Luthen's was terrible writing. She was way too smart to do that. Otherwise, 10 out of 10 for this series. Boy, was it bad writing? Was it out of character for Dedra Meero to do that? I don't think so, given the circumstances. She was trying to keep a low profile. She wanted to bring in the big fish because that was going to then absolve her. I think in her mind, she thought, if all of this bending the rules that I do gets us access, then I'm going to be a hero. She's still chasing that hero welcome.
And also remember what Partagas told her when she got assigned to Gorman and they talked about access. And he said, don't put the spotlight on someone until you've captured them. He says that to her.
Right.
He thinks that all of this talk about access and no results have kind of damaged Dedra's reputation maybe a little bit. And so the Gorman thing is something of a gift to her to kind of clean up her reputation. And sure, the access thing continued, somebody else picked up on it, but they took her off of that. And that's what he says. Yeah, he says, I don't remember the exact line, and I could probably look it up here in a matter of seconds.
That's a really good point when he says next time, find the person before you make them famous or something like that.
It was, yeah. I think that was, arrest them before you make them famous. I think that was the line.
That's a really good point as to why she goes it alone. She's trying to do exactly what Partagas tells her to do. Like a reboot, like a start over.
Right. So is that terrible writing, or is she taking the advice of a senior officer, her commanding officer in the Empire? You say she's too smart for that. She does say she had the building surrounded, and I believe she did. I believe she did. When they say she went alone, that just meant she went on her own volition. Right. But surely she had armed troopers with her, but for dramatic effect, she wanted that confrontation with Luthen. And I think the story demanded, finally, these two meet face to face. Finally. After all of this time. You want to call that bad writing? I call that brilliant story strategizing. And excellence as far as making the story work. Because like I said, I'm giving you the example right now, the situation with Partagas and Dedra when he told her, make them famous after you've arrested them.
Yeah.
So she's not going to, start, firing up the alarms and yelling
she's
out
cried
of the...
wolf before.
She's cried wolf before, right?
So she may not have even gotten the support had she said, I've got him this time. This time I'm for real. Sure, we've heard it all before, Dedra.
Yes. And that could have given Luthen the amount of time he would have needed to slip away if she went through all that bureaucratic red tape and went through the proper channels to raid Luthen's gallery. She had the information. She jumped on it. And it's not like nobody knew. I mean, Lonnie Young knew about it and warned Luthen, hey, she's on you. She's putting together a squad. They even say that. Yeah. So she obviously had been going through some of the proper channels, I guess, but maybe her superiors would have liked to have been filled in a little bit more. I don't think that's bad writing at all. I think it's brilliant, right? I think it's the exact opposite of what our lovely, loyal listener had to say.
Peter Beiser says, Andor reignited my Star Wars love. Huge thanks, RFR, for these after shows. Love you guys and the YouTube chat. And shout out to Barf and the VIP crew. All these RFR friendships make my fandom special. Well, thanks, Peter. You're a huge part of that yourself, and we appreciate you. Here's Suds says, Swank wearing a hat and hiding that perfectly styled hair of his. Boo. Sorry, Suds. It's been a day, so the hat was on. Didn't have time to get the locks already. Also from Suds says, seeing Dedra in the prison was sweet justice. Cheers, Jason and Jimmy. Thanks for another season of great after shows. Cheers to you, my friend. Yes, it certainly was. I loved it.
I don't think so. I don't know.
Oh,
I
Max,
think she
Max
was a fall guy.
He's a mark. He's a mark for Dedra Miro.
Well, no, she was a fall guy. She took the hit for, I don't know, things that were kind of outside her control. And they needed somebody to be the scapegoat, and that was her and Partagas. But Partagas, they took away that victory for the Empire. The Empire couldn't make an example out of him. He took care of that. He took that option off the table. So at the end of the day, the only true scapegoat is Dedra Mira. And I don't think that's fair. I really don't. I think there are a lot of moving parts in this overall failure. Here to being the big one. Boy, that guy is a hot mess. And what a quality kill it was to see K2 using the body of Hirt as a human shield as he plowed through that hallway. And
was it ever?
Dead Hirt's taking all those blaster bolts.
Yeah, it was very, very sweet revenge. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy, as they say.
That was the justice. Right. K2. K2 was judge, jury, and executioner.
Yes, for sure. And that was a very satisfying scene. It was great to see Cassian and Melshi working on this together, the two of them, this rescue. Yes. But once again, and we hear this from Vel, once again, Cassian, she says, I wish he would stop rescuing people. And so it's not without consequence, and it's definitely foreshadowing with what does happen to Cassian in the very end, talking about Rogue One, of course, but he does have this history. And the dynamics, let's talk a little bit about the dynamics that are going on Yavin. First of all, we've got these characters all falling into place. Raddus is back. We see Admiral Raddus.
I'll tell you what, I got a fever, and the only prescription is Steven Stanton as Raddus. I was so happy that they better have used Stanton for this voice. And so I'm going through the credits real slowly afterwards. Sure enough.
Yeah.
Admiral Raddus, voiced by Steven Stanton. I was very happy to see that.
And, characters in Star Wars can be vehicles and they can be planets. They take on character of themselves. And I thought Yavin was just portrayed beautifully. Some of these shots that give us a side of the planet that we've never seen before. And there's, it hits you at all the feels though too, when you see the X-Wings, you see the sparks flying as they're working on top of the vehicles, just like Chewie when he was working on top of the Falcon on Hoth. But I think it's really a great, and again, this is nothing new. We saw this with Rogue One originally. We saw a taste of it with the sequel trilogy when you saw the remnants of the Empire. But I love when Star Wars takes these things that are incredibly familiar, literally toys that so many of us played with, and just moves the camera slightly, just changes it up a little bit. So you're seeing it in a way that is so new and you're no longer numb to it. Not that we ever go numb to it, but you know what I mean? You see an X-Wing, you see an X-Wing. But when you see it on Yavin in this show, you notice little things that maybe you don't, because you're so used to those familiar shots that we've watched for years and years. So I thought they pulled off Yavin really, really well.
When I think back to looking at A New Hope, and we get introduced to this environment for the first time, and they give us a few establishing shots of the hangar, and you hear the voices over the intercom and everything, and it's really cool. And you just kind of want to go in there and like poke around in the corners in the back. What's back there? I can't see. It's too dark. What's that? There's a Y-wing, but what's that behind there? Oh man, I wish I could just go poke around in there. This show gives us that ability to poke around that film set from 1977 and just have a good old time, discovering new crooks and crannies. And I'll tell you what, at Yavin Base, there was a cameo from Rogue One, the same actor, same character, that I think went past a lot of people. I went over a lot of people's heads. It's a vocal cameo. And so I have 2 audio clips here I'd like to play. Clip number 1 is the cameo itself from from Andor, season 2, episode 11.
Yavin Tower, you have not been authorized to leave the base. You need to stand down and return immediately.
So I took it into the RFR Sound Lab and cleaned it up so you can hear, but you know who that is, right, Jason?
No, I don't.
Play it one more time.
Yavin Tower, you have not been authorized to leave the base. You need to stand down and return immediately.
So yeah, it's the Yavin flight control controller on the radio, and it's the same guy that we heard in Rogue One on that radio, and his name is Tony Gilroy.
Oh my God! Here I was thinking it was Dan Gilroy. They sound just alike.
They sound exactly alike, but yeah, he's the radio voice, and he's playing the same role in Andor that he played in Rogue One. So
I love it.
Clip 2 is Tony Gilroy's cameo in Rogue One.
Cargo shuttle, read back, please. What's going on out there? That ship's off limits. No one's supposed to be on board until further instructions. That's an impounded Imperial ship. What's your call sign, pilot?
Rogue One.
Rogue One? There is no Rogue One.
Love it.
So yeah, there it is. Another actor is once again playing the same role he played in 2016's Rogue One here in 2025's Andor season 2.
All right. Well, his name has been obviously on my lips and on my tongue all night. Saw Gerrera, finally. All right, let's talk Saw Gerrera.
You even used him for the show art.
The show art. I know. I think that's probably why. Someone in the chat said, how is he mistaking Luthen for Saw? It's called a misspeak. I'm not literally thinking, but thank you for wondering that. Okay.
I said Lando this week when I was trying to talk about Han Solo, and that wasn't even on mic.
Well, there was no one there was there anyone there to notice it?
No, it was a message I was recording for someone, a birthday message for an RFR listener.
Oh, very nice.
Happy birthday, Guillermo.
Guillermo. I think Guillermo's in the chat here tonight.
Yeah. Oh yeah. His wife, Shannon, she reached out and she's like, yeah, it's Guillermo's birthday. Can you do a cameo for him? It's like, I'll give you, but I'm like, listen, hey man, this is my birthday cameo gift to Guillermo. So I was very happy to do that. But Guillermo knows that I was talking about Han Solo and I said Lando instead, like some kind of Yahoo
Yeah.
That's a misspeak.
So Saw shows up. But yeah, I want to talk about the dynamics of what's going on there on Yavin. I mean, Saw is up to his normal chaotic ways, but he does make sense. You know, he says, I love this little rant where he says, tell me why whenever I'm being scolded for troubling you, I'm reminded the rebellion is bigger than all of us. And yet when you feel inconvenienced, all I hear is how small and how fragile it's all become. You can't really argue with it. And you can totally see his point because they know he's on Jedha. They know that he's doing his typical, I want to say, small ball Saw tactics. Saw is still very much, he's a terrorist. I mean, that's all there is to it. He's a terrorist. He doesn't think big picture. He's definitely a true believer, and he's been dedicated to the cause or his cause for decades. But they know on Yavin that this guy he could blow the whole thing up because he is so reckless and he refuses to work with people. And Mon Mothma is absolutely pleading with him, Jim, saying, we're not the enemy. The Empire is the enemy. We're not your enemy. But Saw doesn't want to hear it. He's just, is he lost? Is he insane? Or as they say? But Draven corrects when I think it's Bail Organa says that he's mad, he's insane, and Draven says no, he's not.
No, he's not at all. Well, maybe he is a little bit. I like to think of my Saw as just a little insane. Come on. And weren't you disappointed he didn't take a single hit off that gas mask? Not once.
Not one time. Well, maybe he's cutting back. Maybe it was Lent there on Jedha, and he's giving it up. He's giving it up.
Or maybe right after he turned the holo projector off,
right.
he took a big hit off of that thing. But Saw is an interesting character because he's been at this business of rebellion and insurgency long before these senators who got involved in it, you know, and who want to make this like the Senate and have all of these quorums and you know, hash it out with votes and stuff. Saw doesn't see it that way. He's boots on the ground and has been since he was very young, living on Onderon, fighting separatists. The guy is a career rebel. These Johnny-come-latelys are popping up on holograms telling him how to conduct rebellion. He knows how to do it. Thank you very much. But right, he's reckless. He's not treating it as a splinter government that's trying to establish itself. Essentially is what the rebellion is with all these politicians, and they're trying to basically create a splinter government, their own scene where there would be protocols, there would be actual things that happen, like debates and hearings and all of the things that senators and politicians do. And Saw doesn't have time for that. He's fighting a war. He's a soldier, but not necessarily a leader. That's what I think.
Here's a question, and I agree with you. I think that they are thinking of that. But I was also, at the same time, as I'm watching Bail, who, by the way, I never saw Bail Organa as the guy that was the final say or calling the shots. But in these episodes, he sure seems like he is. And I'm like, who the hell put this guy in charge? To me, Mon Mothma was always, I thought, was the one with the final say. But Bail seems to be telling everybody what to do. And I got to tell you, it rubbed me the wrong way. It really rubbed me the wrong way, because not only is this a fake Bail Organa, but I'm sorry, I had to, but no, it really did rub me the wrong way, because I never saw Bail Organa as anything other than a guy that was stalling the Senate out for the Empire or for the rebellion. I didn't see him as being any kind of tactical or strategical mastermind and telling the rebellion essentially what they could and they couldn't do and when. So this is very new to me. I don't know how it is in the comics and in the books, but this to me kind of came out of left field.
Well, there's so much about Bale we don't know, I think. I mean, it's not like he's really been a figure in the forefront of any of these stories. He's very much kind of on the outskirts of what happens to main characters in Star Wars at all time. So it's really interesting that this puts him in a place of basically president of the rebellion or something.
Yeah.
Like, where he's,
Who elected him?
He's the buck stops here guy. Well, I think the fact that he is still living a double life, he still has political influence outside of the rebellion itself. He still is a senator. He still is serving as a senator and still working the system. So in essence, he's the highest ranking politician among them because he's the only one still. I think those other senators, though, at the table are also still active.
Yes, I think so too. Yeah.
Because we saw them in Rogue One.
Boy, aren't they taking a huge risk, whether it be Bail Organa or any of those others, going in and out of Yavin? I would think that would be an enormous risk.
Who knows about Yavin? That's the question.
I suppose.
Who knows? Yeah, Yavin seems to be remote and uninhabited largely. We never see anyone else on Yavin outside the rebels ever.
But if anyone was spying on any of these senators, which we know that they were bugging them, flying in and out of there seems to me a huge risk. Maybe they take all the. I'm sure they take all the precautions, but I expected to see these senators on Holo as opposed to in person.
I think that's more risky though.
Oh, it could be
because
right?
those
could
transmissions could be intercepted so easily.
Right. No,
and they don't do radio transmissions in and out of Yavin. They bring that up, that they have strict protocols over that stuff. So the only way really for their voices to be heard is to send a proxy or be them themselves. There's no Zooming going on. They're not Zoom calling Yavin.
While you mentioned the radio, I just want a little shout out. I just love how analog everything that Clea was doing in the safe house with the radio and plugging in all the cables and the cords. I just loved how, I can't believe I'm saying this. I kind of liked how real world it was. There was something about it that I really enjoyed how antique and quaint it was, and how it was like, well, sometimes the old ways are the best ways, and sometimes analog and these old codes and pulse this and whatever all the techno jargon was, really was an effective way, obviously, for her to communicate. And pretty smart, too, of Dedra to say to Hearst to go pull the old Axis files and look for some of those old frequencies and things that are no longer being used. Maybe you'll find something. It's how they find Clea. But shout out to the prop guy or whoever it was, because I thought it was, I loved Clea's radio. But yeah, getting back to the dynamics here, someone in the chat said they're using majority rules. I didn't really see anything up for a vote. I don't remember them taking a vote necessarily. They were definitely, they do mention quorum. I think, is it Radis that says, we don't have a quorum. So, because who's missing? Well, Dodonna is missing, and then so is Merrick, right?
Yeah, they bring those two guys up. They say they'll be back from their vacation tomorrow. They vacation together. They're in Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, yeah. And then when Cassian and Melshi and Clea and K2 coming in hot in the U-wing, I think it's also Radis, who seems to be a big fan of Merrick. You're lucky Merrick's away. He'd go shoot it down himself. Yeah. You know, great. Oh, that Merrick is really getting put over here by Radis. But yeah, so this is sort of, you can take the senators out of the Senate, but you can't take the Senate out of the senators. And I feel like they're still running things maybe a little too governmental for the stage that the rebellion is in at this point, because what is it doing, really? I mean, guys like Cassian are just going to do what the hell they want to do anyway. So I don't really see that being of any great advantage. In fact, it may cause a lot more trouble than it's worth. But Yeah, I was just very surprised to see Bail Organa having as much control as it seemed that he did.
I was a little surprised by that myself. And he was governing without the charisma of a Jimmy Smits. I'll give you that. So maybe Benjamin Bratt is like our asshole Bail now, like if you need to have an asshole Bail, that would be Benjamin Bratt.
I love that. I love that you have good cop, bad cop, good Bail, bad Bail.
Yeah. If you need charisma Bail Organa, then you call Jimmy Smits. So it'd be interesting to see how they flip-flop them around in the future. He walks, he's in a restaurant. He excuses himself to go to the restroom as Jimmy Smits, and he comes back as Benjamin Bratt.
Back to the phones. We got Jeremy from Texas. Jeremy, you're on with Rebel Force Radio. Hello, hello.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Great. What you got for us?
Listen, I got my son here. Well, I got my son here, Aiden. He's 18, and he wanted to tell Jimmy Mack the Stormtrooper perspective that we were talking about on the Q&A, and he wanted to say something about Saul Guerrera that I thought you guys might think was cool. So I just wanted to introduce him to the crew and just give you a piece of insight if you want it.
Yeah, of course. Let's get some context here. This is from the Q&A.
This is a follow-up to this week's RFR Q&A, which is called Aspects of Andor. And this guy who just called us is RFR VIP Jeremy Lanning. And he brought up this notion about the way that we see the stormtroopers on screen. And, I'm trying to say this without taking the wind out of Aiden's sails. Aiden is Jeremy's son. So let's just turn it over to Aiden and hear what he has to say about the way we see stormtroopers being portrayed in these live action stories. Aiden, how's it going, buddy?
I'm doing good. How are y'all?
Good. I assume you're coming to the end of your senior year here as we're in May and school's wrapping up. You're going to be graduating soon. Is that right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yes. You just turned into a droid. Right, we got a little interference there with your microphone. So go ahead, Aiden. Now, boy, this might be a little rough. Okay, Aiden's back. Aiden, why don't you tell us real quick that theory on the stormtroopers?
Okay, so basically, ever since the show started, one of my favorite things has been how they portrayed stormtroopers. Was because most of the time in all the movies and shows and Rebels and in the original trilogy, the stormtroopers they're so iconic. They're not taken as seriously at this point. They tend to be whenever a stormtrooper is fighting against a Jedi, there's no chance. They're just
right
soldiers. They're just things to be disposed of. They're more obstacles than actual things. But in Andor, most of the cool thing about the show is that we're getting the people's perspective and not the people who are Luke and all the Jedi and all of the big characters all of them. But in Andor, on Gorman, they're all just people and they see the stormtroopers and they're nothing like the regular ISB officers who are just security forces. They're fully clad in armor. They have helmets. They have no faces, so they don't seem like people. Kind of like how the KX droids look so scary because they're just so inhuman. Because the whole idea the stormtroopers that they're supposed to be inhuman. Why else would they expend so much on helmets? Because that's probably expensive. But and they don't really speak. They're more like enforcers. And so it's whenever imagine just being a regular person or something to do a protest and you see a legion of stormtroopers go up on the steps and just stand there staring at you. That's terrifying.
Yeah. And the way we're seeing these stormtroopers now, we're largely seeing from a regular citizen's perspective. So they're coming off as much more intimidating and much more deadly.
Right.
I mean, they're being used as execution squads, for crying out loud. So when people see the white armor of it, say again?
I was just agreeing.
Aiden?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you for agreeing. And I dig what you're saying, though, because when we see stormtroopers, we often see them up against Jedi or powerful soldiers, or really savvy warriors like a Han Solo or a Chewbacca. I mean, these guys just get thrown around and beat on. But when it's the stormtroopers being presented to you from the perspective of a regular citizen, and we're really seeing what they do when they are largely uncontested, like forming up in as firing squads and things like that. Yeah, they're absolutely terrifying. There's no jokes to be made about them. Oh, they couldn't hit the side of a barn. Oh yeah, stand up against this wall, and I'll be 10 feet away from you. I bet I can. They did not miss. No, they didn't. And that whole family, that group of citizens dropped, and the stormtroopers just walked away as if it was nothing. And that's the type of fear that they strike among people in the galaxy, and why we can now see stormtroopers as terrifying. Say that again, Aiden.
Yeah. Oh, I was saying how they're also like, compared to like all the officers who can't stop talking, the stormtroopers are silent. Like, they don't talk. They just follow around and they just do exactly what they're told, no questions asked.
Yes.
Yeah, I noticed that
they
too.
Just
that
orders.
You're so used to hearing that crackle, kind of like Aiden's cell phone connection right now. But you hear that crackle from the stormtroopers. Sorry, Aiden, I'm just busting your chops a little bit, but
it's all good.
Appreciate the call,
Jason
man.
Does. Yeah, thank you,
right.
and thanks to your dad, Jeremy, for providing us with a really brilliant RFR Q&A this week, which I recommend everyone check out at patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio. Only $1 and you're listening to the Q&A for only $1 a month. Come on. We're like giving it away. So, I mean, the only way it could be cheaper is if we paid you to listen. We're not going to do that, but check us out on Patreon. You certainly get a lot of bang for your buck over there. Obviously, the higher tiers you are, the more exclusive content you get. You get video, and you could even have the opportunity to host RFR Q&A with me, like Jeremy Lanning did. And that's what you want to do then, is go to patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio.
Well, I don't know if I can believe this, but he, after his last appearance on Rebel Force Radio Andor After Show, he's back. We've got the man himself, Cassian Andor, calling in from who knows where. Cassian.
Rebel Force Radio. These get idiots who. Hello?
Yeah, Cassian. Hello? Yeah. Sorry,
thanks.
You're coming in loud and clear.
Yeah.
Are you calling us from the U-Wing? Are you calling us from the U-Wing?
Rebel Force Radio. Is that what you call yourselves?
Yes.
Experts in analysis.
Something like that.
Of the show.
Is this Cassian Shatner?
Right,
There's a lot of pregnant pauses here.
Didn't you? Oh, now you have something to say. Okay, well, let me tell you. I have a list here of, let me tell you. I thought that what I did for the rebellion was hard. I was on Narkina 5. That was easier than listening to this.
Being on program. Easier than listening to RFR.
I like Cassian, insult comic
I have
rebel.
A list here.
Okay.
Where do I begin with your brilliant analysis? Oh, I'll start with this. Jimmy McInerney. Did you learn how Saw got his boo-boo finally? Are you happy now?
No, we never learned.
Do you know you feel better? Can you sleep?
No. I actually can't. They didn't show us.
No, they didn't, because you got that wrong. You didn't know what you're talking about. Oh, and another brilliant prediction on your part. Bix is fine. She's doing better than me, in fact.
I did predict Bix was going to die, and I guess I missed out on that prediction.
He did, but no. She ended up very happy on
Actually,
a farm.
I gotta
rolling fields.
I got to stick up for Mac. I don't believe Mac actually came right out and said she was going to die. I think he said she was going to have a bad end. So depending on your point of view, I don't know, being a single mom on that farm planet with B2 and that other droid rolling around? Who knows?
She looked very peaceful and calm.
Let me tell you, she's fine.
I'm trying to stick up for you.
Cassian says she's fine.
What kind of a deadbeat dad are you?
Fine. Well, listen, you thought that, who would have thought that nerd that came out to beat the tar out of me would become, you thought he would become a rebel?
Well, the possibility was there. I mean, it wasn't just me. Even Dan Gilroy himself said that was a possibility. And he's the writer.
So I'm a deadbeat dad? I can't move 2 feet without someone trying to kill me. I don't know who this guy is. Suddenly he's pounding away on my face. And he looks like the softer. I've seen softer fingers on a Ewok.
Softer fingers.
You're saying that Cyril was soft?
Well, he certainly looked it. If you're walking down the street and you see this guy coming towards you, you don't think, "Oh my God, I'm in trouble."
Wow, that's true. Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that, but he did sort of best you. I got to say, Cassian, for as soft as he was, he best you. He had you at gunpoint. If it wasn't for old Rylands, the old man, you wouldn't have lived. Well, I don't know, another year or so. I guess it wasn't that big a deal.
No shit, he bested me. That's what I'm trying to say. And you thought he is going to become a rebel? I can't believe these guys. I don't know. I can't do this anymore. I don't know where. Oh, and by the way, congratulations. It's Jedha. You finally got it. It only took you 10 hours to figure it out. But you finally got it. He's Jedha. Congratulations.
Yeah, you're Jedha too, Cassian.
Last I checked, need another 10 hours before you figured it out. But anyway, what I want to know is, I'm on my way to Ferrix. As soon as I hang up with you, I'm getting on my U-Wing. I'm going to Ferrix. And I really want to know what you think is going to happen, because you're so good at predicting what's coming towards me. Tell me what you think is going to happen. I really want to know. Go ahead.
I just see a bright light in a beach.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, he blew out of here. Wow.
Oh, he's done.
He's gone. He just left.
Because he's so sick of us. He's going to Ferrix. I don't know why he's going back there. His mom's not around anymore. Bix is gone. All of his friends are gone. Brasso's dead.
Even he's gone.
Yeah, he's gone. Farewell, Cassian.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the legacy of Luthen Rail, because he seems to be quite the punching bag for many of the folks there on Yavin. Ironically, it becomes Cassian that I think throws down with the greatest defense, as he's not just defending the intelligence that has come their way about this super weapon, but he's using it also as a way to defend the legacy and the sacrifice of Luthen Rail. And he gets really, really below the belt, I would say, with these guys, because I mean, his last part of his rant is, but it's insulting to hear Luthen run down by people who have given a fraction of his sacrifice to this rebellion. Yeah. And he kind of levels them at that point. I think somebody, probably Bail, Mr. Stick in the Mud, goes, "Enough!" Yeah, because we all have to listen to what Bail Organa thinks all of a sudden.
Well, listen, I've always assumed Bail Organa played a major role in the birth of the Alliance, and it was he and Mon Mothma who actually established it as an organization in the first place. So I don't know where all this Bail Organa negativity is coming from, Swank, and I'm very concerned about all of this.
Yeah, I think he's talking about a soft lightweight. I think he's overrated. I think he's one of the most overrated characters, I think, in Star Wars. And maybe it's just because I'm seeing so many people just going bananas over the fact that we didn't get the great Jimmy Smits, Laurence Olivier himself in this show. And I get it. From a continuity standpoint, it's really annoying. But I mean, Jimmy Smits didn't reinvent the wheel when it came to acting. as Bail
No.
Organa. The guy wasn't very, I wouldn't call it a multi-layered performance that we're missing out on. In fact, I would say that Benjamin Bratt is putting in just as convincing of a turn as Bail Organa. I don't, maybe it's the writing or it's just Bratt's delivery. The character is coming across as very unlikable to me. Even at the end, when he gives the obligatory "May the Force be with you," which is a great moment. I'm like, I didn't want to hear him say it. I'd much rather hear Mon say it, or Draven or somebody. No, I really didn't. I didn't like the character at all in this block. He got on my nerves.
The guy who's raising Leia Organa you're offended? He said, "May the Force be with you."
No, I'm not offended that he said it. I'm just saying I don't think he earned it in this because he's been such a negative Nelly, such a Organa downer.
Well, that's the character.
Disagree? Give us a call, 708-866-1737.
Well, he's got a lot riding on him, Bail Organa, I think. He's under a lot of pressure. Mon disappeared. He's still there in the thick of things. And he's putting himself at great risk. And he knows he has a target on his back. I don't think he realizes that he's placed a target on his entire home planet. But we do find out that that's the truth. So Bail's doing a lot, and he makes the ultimate sacrifice at the end. And also, I think one of the reasons he comes off as sort of salty is it's clear that Bail and Luthen did not see eye to eye. And I don't think that Bail appreciated Luthen stepping in with Andor to whisk Mon Mothma away to safety. I think he felt like he was
maybe he is still sore about that. Oh, I didn't think about that. Yeah.
So,
right.
I mean, it's just another time when Luthen is acting as a rogue and kind of stepping on toes.
Well, it's a good thing he did because Mon Mothma would have never made it off of Coruscant.
But a guy like Bail Organa might be thinking Luthen orchestrated all of that. And you know what? There is a possibility he did. Because
we can't rule it out, can we? We really can't rule that out.
We can't.
No.
Because it was Lonnie Young's agent who corrupted Bail's team. And that could have all been orchestrated by Luthen, just so he would have Mon Mothma instead of Bail Organa. Both Bail and Luthen had pretty serious working relationships with Mon Mothma, no doubt about that. But Luthen obviously felt like, his way was the only way. And when he discovered corruption amongst Bail's team, it was easy to step in. Bail may have been pissed off that he wasn't told about this either. So he might be thinking that this is all a big setup. Also, he believes in the back of his head that the ISB and the Empire, they were on to Luthen. And this whole idea of a Death Star that was planted to smoke Luthen out. And there's no real basis in reality for that information to be considered truthful. That's what I think is going on with Bail. I think he's very conflicted. And so he comes off as an asshole a little bit. Which is something you wouldn't typically hear George Lucas say on one of those film commentary tracks. Yeah, the character of Bail is multifaceted. He's very charming, charismatic. But when he has to be an asshole, he's going to be an asshole.
I just think
George, we can't say that on the track.
He throws a lot of weight around for a guy that is from this planet where they have no weapons. And all of that. It's like, you know what? Just go back to your Senate and do your little diplomatic gig. Let's save the battle plans and all of that for the people that know what they're doing. So just my opinion. But I do like that the writers don't allow, despite the fact that it's the spirit of Yavin and it's these characters that are left. I like the fact that the writers do such a good job of defending Luthen through the words of Cassian, through the words of Clea, even Mon Mothma to some extent. She, not necessarily in these episodes, but we hear her sort of defend Luthen to others. Will is very moved and saddened by the loss of Luthen, who he probably looked at as another one of these father figures, just another one that has let him down, and or that he loses, not let him down, that he loses. So there's plenty of great dialogue that defends Luthen most passionately from Cassian and Clea. When when Cassian is leveling sort of the same things that you were through the lens of Bail Organa, about him not being a team player, about him wanting to always go it alone. And she says, well, thank God he did. Thank God he did stay. Because they're even criticizing him on Yavin Base about staying on Coruscant too long. In fact, I think Bail even says, it might not be Bail, but he's talking about how he stayed on there too long. Word is the ISB was onto him, and maybe he was getting, who knows? And there's sort of an implication like maybe he was going to turn, maybe he was going to. So and that's when Cassian has just had enough, and he's like, when I say I know Luthen or knew Luthen, I mean the good and the bad. So Cassian's there to say, look, I see the warts. I was there. I would experience them, and I paid the price for a lot of them. But at the end of the day, we are all here and have this moment right now that we know what happens because of Luthen Rail. So I liked it. I'm Team Luthen, not Team Bail.
Oh, that's clear. That's clear. And the way the story is presented, it's... the sympathies are all there for Luthen, and we understand his sacrifice. We understand his missteps, and we understand his victories and the victories that continue in the wake of his death too. I think are pretty important. So he is one of those guys that should be honored. Bail Organa is just, he's really not presented in that kind of type of light as far as the story goes. He's a politician who's very sympathetic toward the cause, and somebody who is tight with Mon Mothma, clearly, but not necessarily someone who's fueled by the same passion that Luthen is. I think Luthen goes down as the most passionate rebel in the history of Star Wars.
I would agree with that. The other thing that's a little surprising, Jim, is that the interpretation that some of the others, who's the senator? Palmo
or something.
Palmo, and then there's the other guy, the guy with the beard, and they're kind of the ones that are putting some doubt in the minds, or trying to put doubt in the minds of Mon.
The Rogue
Cassian
One
and Draven. Oh yeah, crack that baby open.
Rogue One visual guide, and that tells you who all those senators are, and they're the same actors and everything that appeared in Rogue One, which I thought was pretty cool. You love to see that
for
kind
Bail
of
Organa. I'm just here.
So if you'd like to join the Bail Organa fan club, send a self-addressed sealed envelope to Jason Swank at.
I think I'm going to put Bail Organa right up there with Mace Windu. If I ever took the Yoda questionnaire, I would have a hard time when it comes to your least favorite character. It'd be a toss-up between Mace Windu and Bail Organa now.
So we saw this guy briefly on Yavin. Remember him?
Oh, yeah.
His mouth is always open. I forget. I have the action figure of this cat. What's his name? Podok Draba Tackett. That's his name. What a weirdo, but he's a weird alien species. They always show him with his mouth wide open. And Powell, that's his name. Powell. Oh, whatever. But I'm trying to find these senators. So, whatever page they're on. Here's a.
Oh yeah. Oh, by the way, that last shot of Saw, he is full Rogue One Saw.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. The last year or two have been really rough on him.
Yes.
And, okay. The senator, we have this guy was there. Can we see him?
Who's that? The bearded dude.
With Jebel. Senator Jebel. He is Minister of Finance in the Alliance Cabinet.
Oh.
And he's trying to...
The money man.
So he wants a negotiated peace settlement with the Empire. He believes that's possible. He thinks they could sit down at a table with guys like Tarkin, Krennic, and the Emperor and just talk it out. Let's just talk it out. Yeah. I don't think so, Jebel. But he's always there to react unfavorably to anything some of these rebels bring up. There's your favorite right there. Jimmy Smits is Bail Organa.
Yeah.
And, kind of dressed similarly.
Very much so, yeah.
In that cloak that makes him look like he has no arms. And then we have this one was also there. Palma, Senator Palma.
That's it. Palma.
Where is she? There she is.
There she is.
Palma. So she is Minister of Education. I don't know if that's within. She's a senator, so that must be her position within the Senate. Minister of Education, and she works with Alliance Intelligence. And it's interesting. This book here from 2016 says that she has been exposed to evidence of the Empire's worst atrocities, including the actions on Gorman, Geonosis, and Lasan. I don't know Lasan.
This is Palma.
This is Palmo.
Palmo.
Pamlo. I'm sorry. Pamlo is what her name is, not Palmo. Pamlo. She has no doubt that the Death Star is real, but she wishes first to consult with her people.
Well, in this episode, they're chalking this up to conspiracy. They think that it's exaggeration. They think that it's conspiracy. They think that it's speculation.
Or they think Luthen's being played, and it's just
misinformation.
Misinformation being used to smoke him and his associates out. Yeah, complicated mess.
But it's all going to be corroborated when they get the information out of Tivik on what's that planet that he's heading to? Kafrene.
The Ring of Kafrene, yes.
Yeah.
And Tivik tells him about the Imperial pilot who's defected. And that's that's when the Death Star becomes more real. But they still, the Alliance is still skeptical, even during the course of things that happen on Rogue One, where they still think it's fiction that the Death Star is working on some planet-destroying weapon. They think that's rumor and fear and paranoia.
Well, Jim, I put together a little scrapbook of photos as the final events of this episode 12, take place. I love this idea of Cassian watering his plants.
Yeah.
We know it's the last time he will ever set foot on... Oh, no. He does come back to Yavin. That's right. He does. Okay. Well, that's why he's watering his plants. I was sitting here going, wow, this is so dramatic. This is the last time. But no, of course, he does come back. I should have watched Rogue One. As we mentioned, we've got Will and Drina living their best life, having a little friendly breakfast together. We've got...
I'm happy for Will, too, by the way. You know, Will went through a lot. He lost his father on Ferrix. He got smoked out of Ferrix. He had to leave his home planet and stuff. Found true love with this young lass from the Gorman front. I'll tell you what, it's tough being in the rebellion, but it's a great place to meet chicks.
I mean, big Drina. My goodness.
Yeah, I know. Leia.
Clea. Yeah.
Leia and Leia.
Right, Clea and Leia. I really love this shot of Vel and Mon. You know, Mon who left this life of luxury and money, and here she is just having this simple meal with the troops. I thought that it was a lovely way to sort of frame her here at the end of this, along with Vel, and being able to really connect with her cousin. They don't have to meet clandestinely. They're not wearing masks anymore. They can just be themselves. And I thought that was a really nice end for them, at least in terms of this episode.
The life. they're out of the closet rebels now. They can
Right.
live and rebel openly, well, as openly as you can as a rebel. And I do like what you're saying about how it shows how Mon's new life is vastly different from her old life, living amongst riches and luxury, all the opulence of being a senator and being from Chandrilla and all of that. And now she's mess hall Mon, eating with the commoners, you know. It's
Mess hall Mon. I love it.
She's come a long way.
And then we get to see Perrin. We check in with Perrin and look at him. He's driving around still dressed like $1 million. I don't know. He's almost like a Chandrillan Hugh Hefner here. He's always wearing the silk robes. But here he is with a drunken Scaldin. This is the former wife of Scaldin.
Or current wife.
Or current, yeah, I guess. Yeah. Fill in the blanks.
For nice Scaldin, yeah. Somehow he ended up with her. And somehow he ended up getting their limo back, too. How do you get the car back? Cassian took off with it, remember? And they must have ditched it somewhere, right? How did he get it back? It's the same ride.
Same ride? Maybe. It's the same ride?
Well, it sure looks like the same make and model. I don't know if it's the exact same car, but I'm assuming it is. Like,
he knows the guy at the dealer. He's like, look, I got to get another one of these, just like, you know how much I always love that speeder.
Or he just got a call from the Coruscant cops and they found it ditched somewhere by the river or something. And he's like, oh, thank God I had really expensive cigars in the glove box.
You know what? I'm gradually, I don't know what's happening to me in the last days of Andor. I'm getting more of an affinity for Perrin and less of an affinity for Bail Organa. Something's wrong. I get it. Maybe. Oh, and here's Dedra. Boy, does she really? She gets it there in the end. I mean, some would say sweet desserts. Jimmy Mack has a little bit of sympathy for her. She was just following orders. She was just trying to do what she felt was best. And she really does believe when she has that impassioned speech with Luthen, man, she is really delivering what she believes is the imperial, the mantra, the reason for it existing is to create security and create order. And that guys like Luthen, they just want to create chaos and then hide behind, I love it, your silly wig. Your silly wig and your artifacts.
Yeah.
Just brilliant dialogue. Brilliant stuff.
Yeah. And now she's on program.
Oh, man.
You like that vocal effect?
I loved it. That was great. We spare no expense here at Rebel Force Radio with our effects. It's great. Clea manages to kind of smile just a bit. And I can't help but think that as she's watching Melshi and the troops running through the jungle and training and this whole operation, she's smiling because Luthen, her father, for all intents and purposes, made all this happen. And it's blossomed into something that is really, really important. And by the way, I am so happy and was so happy that Clea survived. I was really pulling for, because I knew Luthen wasn't going to survive it, but it still kind of devastated me to watch him finally die. And so I was just really pleased that Clea, the closest thing we had to Luthen, does make it to Yavin and brings that part of Luthen to that planet and that base.
Yeah, it's just good to see that there's some survivors from this story. I mean, there are more than I actually thought there would be, quite honestly. Vel, Clea, Willman. I mean, these guys have all had key moments throughout the story, and they could possibly be recruited for future stories in Star Wars, depending on which direction they want to take the franchise in. Or they could just continue to go directionless like it has been, and these guys could show up next week. Who knows? But I'm just saying that there's still pieces on the playing board and can be used maybe in some original trilogy era stories if the opportunity presents itself.
Well, funny that you mentioned that, because we have a young man on the phone that wants to talk about that very thing. What happens with the survivors of Andor? because it's time.
It's time for Blake's Take.
Blake, we made it through another series of after shows. And this is it. This is the end of Andor. But according to what you want to talk about, maybe not the end for all these characters. So we were just going through the roster of where people are at the end of this episode. And you have some theories?
Yeah. I think that the survivors who, like, survive the Andor show and don't die in Rogue One and all that, I think that they're going to have maybe a spin-off show or they're going to be in a project or something altogether. Because it might take place on Yavin. So it could be like
timeline-wise, though,
or something.
Okay, all right. So, but timeline-wise, where would this project, which we have no evidence to believe that this is happening. This is all speculation about these survivors and following their adventures with the rebellion. So you think that Hoth is the next stop?
Hoth might actually be, because we know that they leave Yavin. They go to Hoth.
Did we lose him? Sound like he just faded away.
Oh,
we lost Kid Blake.
Blake,
must be his bedtime.
Are you back with us? Hello, Blake.
Yeah, he just faded away. The Empire got him.
Going to Yavin.
Oh, there he is. He's
them
back.
Going on
Well.
like a mission or something.
Hey, Blake.
Blake,
Unfortunately, there was a little bit of a dropout in your signal. So can you go back? I mentioned Hoth as being your speculation as to where these adventures would go next.
Okay, so Hoth, and then, like, because they leave Yavin, and then they go to Hoth, but maybe in between is where this takes place. Like, they go on missions or something, like couple missions to just like take place during the time.
Yeah,
and maybe they're like getting things for Hoth to get prepared.
Yeah,
this way they could be their new base.
Yeah, so. Here's how I would like to see something like, if something like this were to happen. And I was thinking a lot about this while watching these last 3 episodes, is you could tell stories about the rebellion during the time of the original trilogy, but just deal with a different group of rebels. And you would hear talk about other things. So imagine if you found yourself on Hoth, maybe right after the destruction of the original Death Star. Maybe these were the very first rebellion settlers of Hoth. They were just setting it up around that time. I think you could tell more tales of the rebellion without having to lean on the legacy characters, which you obviously want to save maybe for bigger and better things. So definitely watching Andor has opened me up to the idea of how interesting it might actually be to follow the rebellion from other rebels as opposed to the main cast of characters that we're used to. But I don't know. I think that this is probably going to be it in terms of live action for these characters and these actors. But let me tell you, if Star Wars Publishing has anything to say about it, they're going to have every opportunity to ruin these characters for years to come.
Dead silence from Kid Blake, but he must be a big fan of the book, so we don't want to offend him. But those are great points that you guys are bringing up about possible eras in which to have live action storytelling go down. There's a 3-year period between the end of A New Hope and the beginning of Empire Strikes Back. And basically, I mean, what do we know of that 3-year period? All we know is that Han Solo ran into a bounty hunter on Ord Mantell. And that's it. I mean, that's really all we know about what went on during that 3-year period. I think that is real fertile ground for awesome storytelling. But again, as you say, Jason, publishing may have already sprayed in that corner to claim the territory for their own.
Yeah.
And some of those stories that were told in that period, I read them and they were lackluster at best. So,
someone mentioned Dantooine as being something that could have been tossed into this storyline, because we know that they find remnants of an old rebel base. So it's sort of a precursor, or maybe happens around, or is in operation around the same time of Yavin. We don't really know. Something they could have thrown in there, the Gilroys.
It has to be. Well, it has to be, because in Rebels, Mon is going to a meeting with a bunch of Alliance supporters on Dantooine. That's where the Ghost is taking her, essentially, is to Dantooine. But then I think Gold Squadron finishes off the actual trip to Dantooine.
Oh, so she takes a little detour from Coruscant to Dantooine and then on to Yavin.
Yes, yeah. And so apparently wherever they met on Dantooine, those are the remnants of a rebel base that the Empire finds in A New Hope. That's my guess. And there was a lot of speculation that Mina Rao, the wheat field planet that we see Bix on at the very end of the show, and we saw earlier in the season, that planet, a lot of us were thinking it could be Dantooine, because Dantooine was always described as like a wheat field kind of planet with these creatures that would essentially swim through the crops and stuff, and it was crazy times. But those are, stories are all legends now, if you will, and the only Dantooine we know of is the one where the Empire finds the remains of a base, and the one where Mon Mothma had this top secret, high class or top secret, highly clandestine meeting with rebel sympathizers. So.
All right, back to the phones. We've got Dr. Dom waiting. He wants to talk about Luthen and why he shouldn't have killed Lonnie. Dr. Dom, thanks for waiting.
Yes. Hello. And sorry for my gourmet accent, by the way.
No problem.
Hey, Dom.
How you doing, Jimmy? Oh, I shouldn't ask that. So anyways, on program.
On program, young man.
We see a rebellion and an empire here, right? And in the empire, the people are scared. We see it all the time in this show. Every Imperial is scared of his boss. We even see Partagaz off himself when he fails, because he does not want to face consequences. They all live in fear. That's the empire, right? Fear will keep you in line. And the rebellion is based on hope. They say it about 100 times. Rebellions are based on hope. And it's the hope that people will look out for you, right? That you're going to get extracted. They extract Mon Mothma, they extract Leia, they get Leia from the Death Star. So the rebels are the good guys, and they look out for each other. So when Luthen just shoots out poor Lonnie, who just had the biggest scoop, and he says, "You got to help me. It's time for me to get extracted." He just shoots him. I know why he does it, and we know why. We know the story, but the way it looks, it makes him look as bad as the Empire. Because later on during the show, we see some ESB guys talk. You know what happened to Lonnie? Yeah, he got shot. And if there was a single guy that wanted to jump ship and pull a callus and go to the rebellion, they're going to say, you know what? I'm going to stay right here, because these rebels, they're just going to kill you just like the Emperor would. So I think the turning point of Luthen killing a guy means that he did great, but it was time for him to go and let the rebellion be led by people who were inspiring, like Mon Mothma and maybe Bail Organa and Princess Leia, and not a guy who's going to shoot his informant for giving him great information, right? So I think Luthen had run its course, and shooting Lonnie instead of helping him, that's a threshold that he stepped over.
Yeah, it's
and
not
that's why he had
exactly
to
a
go, I
great
think.
recruitment tool to attract future turncoats. That is true. I'll give you that. I just think that in the moment when the stakes were so high, Luthen just couldn't risk it. He couldn't worry about the downstream consequences of what this might mean should they need to recruit some more Imperials to the cause. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But I think in the moment, Luthen realized that the greater opportunity here was to get that intel off planet as quickly as possible, because it could spell certain doom for our band of rebels.
But do you think he gave it to Clea because it's his daughter? And because he could just have said to Lonnie, run with it. Or maybe Lonnie's, because of his family, is not a good choice. I don't know why. He just killed
It's
one
the
guy
family.
and
It's
gave
definitely
the task to his daughter.
It's definitely the family. That was, yeah. He could have said, "All right, Lonnie, you're on the next shuttle out to or transport to Yavin." That would be. You could maybe do that, but he specifically brings up the wife and the daughter. He's not going to leave without them. Now, all of a sudden, Luthen's booking passage for the whole family. It's way too much. Luthen and Clea live pretty unattached. You hear these stories about people that work for the CIA, MI6, or whatever. They always have a go bag, and they got their shoes by the door, and they don't have much hanging on the wall. They don't have a lot of pictures sitting around because they're ready to move, as Luthen says, move when I need to move. So I like the point. It's a great point of view that, yes, he might have ruined the brand of the rebellion with future recruits, but in the moment, I don't think that was his number one priority. But love the call.
The growth in Andor. We see the growth with Andor with Cassian, because he kills his next informant, but then later in Rogue One he spares Galen Erso, and so that's the first step.
Well, he spares
towards
Galen
this new
Erso
vision.
because he's a little sweet on Jin, I think. But
yeah, maybe two.
Does he? Wait a minute. I'm gonna have to wait. Hold on, Dr. Dom. How long has it been since you saw Rogue One? Because I need a fact check here, because I can't.
Oh, it's been a while.
Okay, yeah, because I can't recall how Cassian, he does take the shot, but he misses, right? Or does he not take the shot?
No, he just doesn't take the shot. He looks
take
through the
shot.
scope and then puts the rifle down.
Okay.
And then
after
X-wings and Y-wings come in and drop bombs on the platform, and that because they were radioed in, so
right.
they came flying in, and that was that. But
Thanks
yeah,
for
he
the
did
call,
take the
Dom.
shot.
It's a good
And
one.
we assume he didn't take the shot out of sympathy for Jin Erso, or I don't know why he doesn't take the shot. Is that actually explained in the dialogue in Rogue One?
I don't know. Maybe someone in the chat has some thoughts here. Let's go to Super Chats here. This is Adam. Adam says, new trooper alert. Wasn't aware the ISB had their own security troopers. Another great design. I thought it was cool. FJ was giving me crap last night. He's like, oh, I bet Swank already has this action figure on pre-order. And I go, yeah, you're right. I actually do. I have the Black Series on pre-order. I like it.
Oh, those things are coming out on Black Series?
Yeah.
Those troopers? Yeah.
Right. The tactical troopers. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They were cool. They were very cool. And yeah, I'd like the action figure too, but I don't collect those large dollies. I like action figures that you can fit in your pocket. But I thought they were really cool. And, essentially it's just kind of a mashup of Imperial trooper armor, stormtrooper armor, but they don't wear the helmets. They often wear the black Imperial cap. I just like it because you get the intimidation of a stormtrooper with the personality of the individual. And I really like that big bald guy they had leading the gang. I would get a multi-pack of all 5 action figures, including Hirt. Shooting practice Hirt, we could call that action figure. But yeah, the bald guy was particularly intimidating. I like the way he held his blaster up high and the way he stood in the middle and led those troops. His name was Gariel. I don't think they ever actually say his name, but it appeared in the subtitles. Gariel. And it was great watching B2 holding Hirt, using him as a shield as Gariel is firing at him. And then we see Gariel fly across the room. Or is it Gariel? Maybe it's Gariel now that I look at it. Gariel. He flies into the wall. Melshi and Andor are watching. They're like, what the hell is going on? And then the relief.
You have no idea.
See, I thought when they just had K2 just walk right into the door frame, I thought it would have been funnier if he just kind of like leaned in with his head first.
He did.
And, I cleared the path, and then stood it. But he just filled in the entire door frame and said, Cassian, I've cleared the path. In that innocent way. He's kind of like a kid in this series. I really felt like that. Where are we going? They let us go. Draven walked us here. Draven brought us home. It's like he's like a little kid.
It was
just wanting to please.
His attack on the tactical troopers was something out of a slasher movie. I mean, it was horror. It really was, and it's so rare that you see a sequence like that, and it's actually the good guy that's winning.
It was
kind of satisfying.
There was also elements of comic relief involved in there too.
Oh,
especially when he
Oh,
was
yeah.
walking down he was coming down that skywalk, and that trooper comes out and says, "Are you with us?" He goes, "No," and just slaps the guy over the walkway. And just all of that, just casual humor with K2 is so good, and he's such a great character. Can't believe we're not going to be seeing more of him.
I know. That's it. It's it.
Yeah.
Tells has a super chat here. It says, a serious adult drama set in the Star Wars universe. This series was a breath of fresh air. RFR number 1. Also, hug, marry, kill, Dedra, Edie, or Bix. Hug, marry, kill. Well, I'm definitely marrying. I'm definitely marrying Bix. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hug Edie because I think she could just use a hug. And I'm gonna kill Dedra if I have.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. We got 1 out of 3 in common here. I would marry Bix, I would kill Edie, and I would hug Dedra. On program.
Good question. Steve Breedlove with a super chat says, random thought. I love the Hannibal Lecter scene where the mastermind is consulted to help a hunter find their prey. Dedra truly deserves the comparison. A very well-written, intelligent sociopath.
Yeah, that's a good breakdown of the character, and I really like that.
Yeah, me too. Good one, Steve.
So
Let's see. Here's I Am Rolling. I Am Rolling says, Baby Bix Baby is Mando. JK. High ground.
Oh, thank God. Thank God, JK. That's all I have to say. Thank God for that JK. I was never so happy to see that. I'm not even a Harry Potter fan. The JK Rowling, whatever. It's
we
just kidding.
We will, I'm sure, be full up of your bad baby Cassian theories for the next, I don't know how long. It's just going to be.
Well, it's clearly Kitster's son. It's not even Cassian's son. It's the son of Kitster. We all know this.
Yeah, right. Once he turns on the charm,
Yeah.
What was Bix to do?
Around.
She's like, Cassian, who? I forgot all about that guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Michael says the hospital was actually named after Lena So, the chancellor in the Young Jedi Adventure Kids show. LOL, it's in Arabesh on the side of the hospital. So a little decoding there puts, I'm sure the Gilroys had nothing to do with that. Lena So, the chancellor in the Young Jedi Adventure Kids show. now officially in live action canon. Love it. I Am Rolling says this donation is for the Jimmy Mack High Speed Internet Fund. Okay.
What's wrong this week? It's not me. It's Swank.
It's me. It's me. I do it on purpose.
He does.
Jeremy Lanning says, my son is on hold to do the Stormtrooper thing. Yep, Jeremy, we got it. You didn't have to send the super chat to tell us that your son was on hold, but I'm certainly glad that you did. Guillermo says, RFR great after show. Mr. Swank, Thrawn #1. No, Krennic better than Thrawn. I think, as far as the way he's been used.
Well, definitely at this point, I mean, who has had the more impactful scenes on screen? It certainly has not been Thrawn. I'm still not even sure why the galaxy considers that guy to be such a threat to begin with. They've given us no reason to consider that other than assumptions that we may have read books from 30, 40 years ago. I mean, come on. Tell us a story, Filoni.
He sort of is living on his reputation, right?
It's all reputation. It's all why are we afraid of Thrawn coming back? Oh, just because. No,
because I love those books 40 years ago. Yeah.
Just because.
I Am Rolling says hot take. Andor 1, 2, and Rogue One are the most overrated Star Wars content of all time. For Star Wars, give me more Galaxy Far, Far Away and less HBO Earthbound drama. Well, you're not alone, I Am Rolling. There's a lot of people that feel that way. That's for sure.
A lot of people feel that way.
I'm somewhat in the middle.
I thought the show was perfectly Star Wars. I really do. I really do. And I think that there's a lot more room for stories in Star Wars to be told that are inspired by Andor and the rich storytelling. It proves that rich storytelling is actually possible in Star Wars. And I would definitely like to see future shows and movies emulate this kind of this level of quality. And I think it can be done. Definitely done while still honoring traditional Star Wars elements like fantasy and Jedi and joy and wonder and things like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be as raw as Andor always is or is in certain moments. But the overall quality of the writing, acting, and the way this show was shot and edited really should be a wake-up call to all Star Wars creators and decision makers. And I think it's light years ahead of anything that Disney has produced thus far. And really, it makes pretty much all the other series look really silly at this point. And this is richness in storytelling. I think Andor kind of pushed it outside the box, just maybe at times a little too much. You know, it was really rough. It was really raw. They had a bleak story to tell. But I think that you can take note of the things that made this show look great, work really well in the narrative, the acting, the directing, everything about it is really well done. And this is how I want all my Star Wars to be produced. I want some thought to go into it. It doesn't feel like there's thought that goes into a lot of Star Wars storytelling. It's all just because. I want real quality storytelling, and Andor gives it to us.
I think there's a ton of thought that goes into things like the production design. I think there's a ton of thought that goes into the costumes. I think there's been a lot of thought in bringing animated looking characters into live action. But you're right, Jim. There's not been a lot of thought when it comes to the story. I'm sorry. It just, not when you compare it to Andor. The other thing that Andor does that I feel like some of the other shows don't so much is I think Andor shows a tremendous amount of respect for the audience. It's really trying every episode to deliver something incredible. And I don't think that we were talking about Thrawn sort of living on the basis of his reputation and history and fandom and all of that. And I think that happens with a lot of Star Wars storytelling in the Disney universe. It's just fueled by fandom instead of being fueled by a great story.
I agree. And I think a lot of the creatives they bring in to do Star Wars get intimidated by it. They feel the weight of all of the years of Star Wars storytelling. They spend way too much time sitting around saying, oh, well, was George Lucas influenced by this? Or what would George Lucas do in this situation? They get so overwhelmed with that stuff that it handicaps them. So even if they are great storytellers, it isn't coming through because they're getting overwhelmed by all of this other outside stuff as opposed to really concentrating and telling a great story. And this goes for, Favreau included, Filoni included, even the successful guys. They work under this pressure of the weight of the history of Star Wars as opposed to trying to create something fresh and different. And Gilroy definitely did this. I like how a lot of people are be like, well, Tony wouldn't do this because he's not a fan. Tony wouldn't do that because he's not a fan. Just because he's stated a few times he's not a fan of Star Wars doesn't mean he's ignorant about it, nor does it mean he doesn't do his homework, which I believe nobody does homework like Tony Gilroy and his squad. So they research it to death. They know what they're doing. And if they don't, they can get on the phone and call the reference desk known as the story group and ask a question. It's not that hard. But these guys know Star Wars. Just because they don't say that they're bleeding heart fans, they know Star Wars. Make no question about it. And I really think that future Star Wars creatives and decision makers can learn a lot from watching this series and using it as a template for how to tell great Star Wars stories.
Paul Kurt says, in rebellion to the last super chat and to offset the $10, Andor is the greatest Star Wars TV series of all time and some of the best Star Wars since the original trilogy. Andor, Rogue One, A New Hope is now a classic trilogy.
Oh, I like that thought process. So then I guess that's the first trilogy, Andor, Rogue One, and A New Hope. So the second trilogy would be the holiday special into The Empire Strikes Back and Jedi. Yeah, that makes sense.
Jeremy Lanning says, something I also remembered about Saul was how a part of his extremism is because he was personally trained by Anakin himself. I did forget that he had sort of crossed paths with Anakin. I don't know about, I can't really recall just what the extent of the training was, but they did spend some time together on that planet in the Clone
but
Wars.
I wouldn't say that Anakin Skywalker is any influence on Saw Gerrera as far as being.
He didn't radicalize him.
Ruthless. Yeah, he did. Yes, right.
Yeah.
As far as like being this ruthless, no holds barred kind of warrior. I don't think Anakin Skywalker can take credit for that or any sort of mindset that Saw Gerrera finds himself in. Anakin did, and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, they did train these people and teach them how to be warriors. But I don't think any part of the mental process can be attributed to Anakin Skywalker. But you bring up a good point, Jeremy. I mean, there might be something in there. It was 3 episodes from, I think, the 5th season of Clone Wars, and they might be worth a rewatch. See, maybe there's something there. But I don't recall any sort of, like you said, Jason, radicalization of Saw Gerrera from being around Anakin Skywalker. And keep in mind, too, that he was around an Anakin Skywalker who wasn't going through all the conflict. Maybe he was a little bit. It was after the death of his mother, of course, which we know caused a certain bit of conflict with Anakin's. Hey, maybe Jeremy's on to something.
Ikana says, I need a Clea spinoff. This feels like the beginning for her. A hardened, kind of mean girl with a heart of gold, learning to get along and trust others as a fish out of water. Classic Star Wars stuff. I tell you, Ikana, I am with you on this. I want to see more Clea. I really do. I don't know about necessarily a spinoff, but this is a character that I think could pop in perhaps from time to time. I'd love to see her resurface. Maybe she could resurface as the New Republic starts to crumble under the weight of the First Order. Who knows? But I would like to see a second act for Clea. Agree.
For sure. Especially now that she's been fleshed out so well.
Yeah.
And we've seen all of these different aspects of her character. I was really surprised to see the sensitivity of her and the depression that overcame her following the death of Luthen and her being exiled from Coruscant. She didn't want to have to leave. She wanted to end up on Yavin, and she feels like defeated and destroyed because she lost Luthen, and he obviously was a big part of her energy, and so she doesn't really know where to go first. Vel convinces her, hey, you're among friends here. And we see toward the end that as Vel is watching, or I'm sorry, as Clay is watching the rebels all prepare and move about, it's like, hey, you know what? We did create something here. These people seem enthusiastic about fighting for the cause. Maybe I shouldn't be so quick to judge them, and maybe I shouldn't judge them so harshly. Maybe we have more in common than I had considered before. So she softens up. You can see there's just a little, even maybe a tiny curl of the corner of her mouth.
Yeah, she was working on a smile there at the very end.
There was just something about her that seemed to be relieved or maybe even inspired by what she was seeing.
Further in the scrapbook, here's the last we see of Dedra as she falls apart here. And who can blame her? Obviously, sitting in one of those cells is terrible, but yeah, heck of a way to go. Cassian,
she can't reveal those emotions with the lights on too. It's the second those lights go off, then she starts weeping.
She collapses. She's got to keep a good face up.
She does. It's the only way she can survive on program.
Cassian marching towards his destiny. This is, again, I know he comes back to Yavin, but this is the start of his last great adventure. I think he knows it. I think he feels it. He looks over, and who does he see? The Force healer, who's sort of like, I don't know, that cat in the nursing home that always seems to sleep with the old person that's going to die next. I think that the healer is looking at him like, yeah, you're marching towards your destiny. This is the vision. This is the feeling that I had. I know it should be more celebratory when you sort of, I guess, accomplish your life's purpose. But it's still, if you're Cassian, you're going to be a little freaked out by that.
I don't know who that actress is, but she looks an awful lot like Anna Gasteyer from Saturday Night Live. Remember
you think
her?
so? Yeah, I remember her.
It's good times. Good times. Yeah. Good times.
And here's Saw, the man, looking like I mentioned, like he's just stepped out of Rogue One. He's got the crazy hair. He's got the breath mask. Jim, you were talking about the leg. We don't see what happened, but I don't think we see him from the waist down at all. So by the time they get to this, he may have that prosthetic leg.
I'm pretty sure he does. And notice he's looking out the same window he stands at when the Death Star ray strikes Jedha and destroys and he sees the horizon, rising up essentially and rolling over and coming towards him as the rings of the impacts float toward him, and he pulls that gas mask off of his armor and just accepts death. But this is the same exact spot he stands in at that moment in Rogue One.
And Krennic overseeing his creation. There it is, the Death Star, without the big what's it called? The dish.
The dish, the laser dish.
Yeah, we see that actually installed during Rogue One. So pre-dish, but it just is beautifully sets everybody up. Cassian and K2 getting in the U-wing, ready to head out to Kafrene. And we do get this little resolution. I thought it was nice that we got some closure for B2. We were speculating, Jim, that he probably was hanging out on that farm planet, but little did we know at the time that he would be rejoined by Bix. I'm sure he was absolutely thrilled to, and I'm sure he's like a midwife too for the birth of baby Cassian or baby Bix. But B2 hanging out. I think this is his woman too, right here. This yellow droid. I think that's the yellow droid. Yeah.
Yeah, he's playing tag with that droid. Apparently, that's what they do on Mina Rao. They identified the droid as being like an agriculture droid, like a ag droid is what they call it. So I assume ag stands for agricultural.
And they do leave you with this uplifting image of this beautiful Bix and this wonderful baby, and that there's a part of Cassian, despite us knowing as the audience that he is marching towards his death at this moment, there's a part of him that is still going to live on. I thought it was really, really smart. One other moment I just got to throw out because people are asking about it in the chat. I fell for it initially also, but when K2 wakes Cassian up, and Cassian is waking up from that dream that he has of his sister, saying, Casa. Yeah. Some were saying that was young Clea, that it was the same actress, and therefore Clea is Cassian's sister. I did a side-by-side. I wanted to make sure, no, they're different actresses. What I think that moment is I think that is when Cassian realized that this next mission is going to be different, and that maybe it will actually lead to reuniting with his sister.
Oh.
She's sort of calling him home in a way, calling to him. So that's the way I interpreted the scene. Who knows? Maybe Cassian dreams of his sister every night.
Right. Or is it a force vision? Or what are dreams anyway?
Right.
Maybe all dreams are force visions. Who knows? Force works in mysterious ways.
What if our dreams are what's real, man, and what's real is a dream?
Could be. Or we're just living in the Matrix. I don't know. But Bix, this it was an elongated shot too. It went on for quite a while.
Spent some time.
And she looks great. So it's nice to see after all she'd been through that she has found some peace, and she has a little baby to care for. We don't know if it's a boy or a girl. I'm just saying the blanket is blue. Okay. And of course, people are already speculating that the baby grows up to be Poe Dameron. Okay, whatever. I don't think so. But
no, I think there's already established canon there about Poe. Poe was conceived on Endor.
Of course. Well, yeah, but we know that that's comic book canon and not necessarily
true. Isn't it all
that could be trumped at any time. But yeah, his parents are supposed to be a guy named Kes Dameron, and I forget the mom's name, but it's comic book canon is what it is. And so Bix out here on this field, I find comfort knowing that Bix has found a resolution to the things that were haunting her. It really appears.
Yeah.
Her executing Dr. Gorst was a step in this direction. Like, you wouldn't get her here unless she was able to put that to rest. Otherwise, she might be still be doing drugs on Coruscant for all we know.
Look, it's just what the doctor ordered, right?
Yeah. Dr. Gorst, you mean?
Yeah, it was a joke. Super person,
I don't think that's
JD,
funny at all.
Smart person JDT. It's been a long night. Smart person JDT says, anyone else love the music for this series? Season 1's soundtrack has a vinyl release. Bought it the other day. Jim, we touched on this a little bit last week. The music isn't blowing me away. I did love, as we mentioned earlier, the John Williams music that was added as sort of a little stinger to the credits this week. Loved that. But the music, it's just, I think it's doing, like I think you said, it's atmospheric. It's there to sort of set the scene, but not really to act as a force of nature like the John Williams scores have.
Right. It doesn't promote that much personality. The atmospheric vibe of it all, though, is appropriate for the show, and it worked well for me. The Andor theme itself, I like, but that's the only thing from the whole show that really jumps out at me as far as a composition goes that I would readily recognize. And quite honestly, I don't see myself sitting down and spinning the Andor soundtrack in any way, shape, or form. So it'd probably just put me to sleep, I think, because it's pretty flat.
But if you love it, you love it. And
hey, you love it, you love it. I got a lot of music to listen to, so I have to be real picky about my ears and what they're exposed to.
Calvin says in the novel Cassian, I'm assuming he means the Rogue One novel. In the novel, Cassian has some inner turmoil about betraying Jyn by shooting Galen, so he decides not to do it because of her. At least that's how I read it. Yeah, that's sort of what we speculated, but it's nice to know that it's mentioned in the book that way as well. John Warren says, Luthen killed Lonnie for the same reason Cassian killed Tivik. Lonnie was probably going to get caught. Cassian isn't like Luthen, though, because he doesn't kill Galen in cold blood. Again, I think there were other circumstances there because of his growing attachment and fondness for Jyn. Scott St. Louis, barf assembled for the after show watch party. Thanks for great shows and helping us through these shows. Scott, Dave, Dan, Brian, and Mike, thank you guys very much. I got a really wonderful email from a RFR listener talking about how these after shows have really helped him because he's a busy guy and he doesn't have a lot of time to rewatch the stuff. He watches the show and then listens to the after show and loves how we fill in the gaps and sort of help explain certain things. And it was just a really nice email. And so I want to thank you. You know who you are for that. Also, Jay Welsh says, RFR number 1, thanks J&J for excellent after show coverage and analysis of Andor Season 2. Andor was proof Star Wars can be all aspects of a modern TV drama with a cinema feel. Jedi Jeff from Maryland. I like that. Modern TV drama with a cinema feel. It's definitely felt cinematic to me. I really felt like I was watching a Star Wars movie.
Gilroy revealed in an interview recently that Lucasfilm has prepped some episodes for theatrical release.
Really?
I don't know exactly what that means, but I know next year's the 10th anniversary of Rogue One. So we might be getting the opportunity to see some of these episodes maybe on the silver screen.
Boy, would I love to see, well, any of them really, but especially this last block and have it lead right into Rogue One.
That would be cool.
That would be great. John Warren says, more Melshi, one way out. Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Cult of Melshi lives on.
Melshi does live on, of course. He's got to show up in Rogue One.
Where he dies.
Right. But, you know, it's a step. Turtle Wars says, the Gurney droid was, I love Turtle Wars always. What he notices is always very interesting. The Gurney droid was cool. I guess we have a significant wait time until our next RFR After Show. Thanks for all that you guys do for the community. Turtle Wars, just because we don't have a new Star Wars series, although there are some things on the horizon, doesn't mean we're not going to do live shows. Mac and I have talked about it in the past. We love doing live shows with calls and super chats and all that. So we're definitely not going to stop doing that. But the next after show is probably going to be some sort of event that we'll do with Mando and Baby Yoda, or Mando and Baby. That's the new name of the movie, by the way. Man, it's been a long night, guys. Mando and Baby Yoda, the movie, the Mandalorian and Grogu film.
I want to see Yoda and Baby Mando, the movie. Adult Yoda, Baby Mando.
Yeah, but, why not?
That might be the next opportunity. It depends on when that Darth Maul animated show, Maul Shadow Lord, drops. That could drop maybe in the first half of 2026. We know that they dropped Bad Batch seasons on us in January for a couple of years ago. So that might be looked at as a good window to unleash some Star Wars animation. And then, of course, Mandalorian and Grogu at the end of May. And at some point in 2026, we'll also have the Ahsoka show returning for season 2. So there's stuff to look forward to. But no after shows on the horizon. But like Jason said, we'll probably do something live at some point over the summer, maybe a few times. Who knows?
Yeah, I love doing these. Rich Brendel says, we need a deep fake Benjamin Bratt Rogue One now. No, there's a lot of people calling for a deep fake of putting Jimmy Smits into these episodes of Andor. So
why? I mean, Smits is alive. Why deep fake him? If you're going to go through the trouble, just fly in Jimmy Smits like you should have in the first place. Scheduling conflict, my ass.
All right. Well, I think that is going to wrap it up, everybody. This has been a lot of fun. It always is when we hang out together for these shows. And this week was no exception to that. We could just keep going, all night long. But, I mean, come on. There's got to be an end at some point, right? No regular Rebel Force Radio weekly podcast this week. We will be back next week. And then the week after that, we're going to Endor. I almost said we're going to Andor.
If it was a place, I'd go there.
Andor. I loved it so much. If it was a place, I would go there. Anyway, so we'll be in Northern California in a couple of weeks for the Forest Moon Festival. You can find details online on the Rebel Force Radio website. Hope you can join us. There's a multitude of events that are going to be unfolding over the course of a couple of days. So maybe if you're in that area, you can make one of them. There's going to be a screening of Fanboys and a Q&A with Kyle Newman and screening of Return of the Jedi out there in the woods. It's going to be something else. Again, those details can be found at rebelforceradio.com. Big, huge thanks to Tyler Page. Tyler is really an unsung hero. Well, you can't sing about him enough, in my opinion. He really helps us with the screening of the calls and just being that steady, constant helper. We'll put it that way for us here at Rebel Force Radio. So thanks, Tyler. Appreciate it. Glad you got your picture taken with the mascot there. We did not get to all the calls. In fact, there's a ton of calls we didn't get to. Apologies, but that's how these things go. These are meaty, thick episodes that we got to get through, because if we don't get to a certain thing, we're going to hear about it for weeks and weeks and weeks. Why didn't you talk about this? So anyway, plenty of time to digest Andor. But Tyler, anything come to mind that we didn't get to that you thought was exceptionally interesting?
Well, we had one caller, Scott St. Louis, call in and talk about how Luthen Rail is an anagram. I can't say that word.
Anagram?
Anagram, thank you. I had it out of touch. For the Unreal, and how
the
Sergeant
Unreal
is real. So, and he had a lot of good evidence for points how this was like seemingly done intentional, because Deidre asks, is this real and stuff? So it was kind of a good. But Jimmy, I had a question. Do you recall my notes from last week, Jimmy? My last thought?
Well, yeah, and I think I want you to go through what you got to say, and I'll explain to you why I reacted the way I did. But go ahead.
Because I said that we were going to see some mention, some exposure to Galen Erso, and I felt like you just shot me down so hard.
He does that.
When I watched these three episodes, like at the time, I was so vindicated. I was like, yes.
Well, here's what you did wrong when you presented this observation. Last week, you said there has to be a mention of Galen Erso because I feel like Andor knows Galen Erso in Rogue One. The way I interpreted you saying that was that you were thinking Andor and Galen Erso had some sort of personal relationship with each other, when in essence, I believe you were saying he knows who Galen Erso is in Rogue One. Okay. But you just said he knows Galen Erso. And your exclusion of the word who is what has made this. You made your own bed, just like Partagas did when he came up with that idea of the diseased Clea and lost all personnel to that silly fictional claim. So,
by the way, Diseased Clea is playing at the Agora next weekend. They're fantastic. Check them out.
They are really good. And their bass player is hot. But but so that's all, Tyler, because I started thinking about this. I was like, why did Tyler think that Galen and Andor knew each other? And then I thought, is there another way to interpret what Tyler said? Oh yeah, he forgot the word who.
Yeah, It's not the first time I misspoke.
You were so close, Tyler,
yeah,
of being
so
right.
close.
You were so close, but you're still
so
wrong.
close. And yes, you are vindicated. Either way.
I felt so good. I almost texted you in the moment, but I didn't. I was like, I don't want to disturb you.
I would have responded anyway. I definitely would have responded. So I would have blocked your call. I'd block your number.
Tyler, we love you, buddy, and thank you so much. I know it's going to be a while before we do an after show, but if we end up doing some live streams, we'd love to have you obviously come in and do your duties. So appreciate it.
I'm always
and I know that there's so much appreciation and love for you out in the RFR community as well. You're a popular guy.
I love everyone here, and I look forward to hanging, whether virtually or in person. So,
all right. We'll catch up with you soon. Jimmy Mack, final thoughts. Andor, period.
Andor, period. Wow. I miss it already, I gotta say. I really do. I thought this show was amazing, and I pray that we get more Star Wars storytelling told with the quality and standards that this show had. Again, I don't think it needs to be as gritty and as raw as Andor got in a couple of places. But I think all in all that Star Wars storytelling could definitely benefit from looking at Andor and discovering what made it work, because it definitely worked. And I hope Tony Gilroy isn't seriously done with Star Wars either. I mean, he can go off and do some other projects. Sure, we'll let him do that. But you better come back, Tony, because we're going to be in big trouble without you. I fear. But we'll see. We have some great filmmakers working in Star Wars. Favreau, I guess, is a pretty great one. I really like the guy who's going to do the Dawn of the Jedi thing, which could be
Mangold,
that which could be of a similar quality to a show like Andor. We know Bo Willimon is working on a draft. We know that James Mangold certainly is a high quality filmmaker. Let me get my head above the super chats here. We know that James Mangold is a high quality filmmaker. I really liked his Bob Dylan film, and Ford versus Ferrari, of course, was really good. And I think maybe we'll see this sort of level of high quality filmmaking in future Star Wars. But, for the Star Wars TV shows, I think they really need to step it up a notch and try to reach the heights that Andor has reached. And yeah, Jason, you're right. They pay a lot of attention to things like wardrobe, sets, special effects, the volume, and all of that. But that's all technical stuff. Give us some good stories for once. Andor really did, because a good storyteller was running the show, and that's Tony Gilroy. Hats off to Gilroy. We'll be talking more about Andor and listening to some interview highlights to kind of glean more information about what we just saw here in season 2 on upcoming episodes of Rebel Force Radio, as I'm sure we'll be picking this show apart for several months to come as we get into the summer, and we look forward to doing it along with you guys. We're all going on the same ride together, and I'm pretty proud of the fact that we didn't get any of those screeners either, and that we went through this entire experience as a united fan base, and there was no podcast elitism coming from your favorite Star Wars podcast host here on Rebel Force Radio. Well, outside of Jason's, typical general elitism, but there's nothing we can do about that.
I do love
Nuke Gunray.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No.
Nuke Gunray, not in this episode. I just want to wrap up final thoughts.
No, someone said,
or whoever, they're not.
Steve said, hats off to Diego Luna too. And that is someone, we give all this credit to the Gilroys, and rightly so. I mean, the writing is so incredible, but Diego Luna really did an incredible job carrying this series. As you said, Mac, all the acting has been great, but I don't feel like I've given a shout out to Diego, and not just on screen, but off screen. I think that he showed a lot of love for the Star Wars fan community also at the convention last month. And I think he realizes, that he's one of us now, and he does a great job. And I think this series has given us more great new characters than pretty much anything that we've seen since maybe the prequel trilogy. Really. I think we're going to see a lot of cosplay of these characters. I think these characters are going to continue to resonate. And Cassian Andor and Luthen Rail certainly cracked my top 10. Cassian might have even cracked my top 5 in favorite Star Wars characters.
And all I got to say is to our Dedra Mira cosplayers is bring the scowl, baby. Bring the scowl.
I love it. All right. Thank you all so much. Appreciate your support. Appreciate the super chats, the phone calls, all of that. Thanks again to Tyler Page. We will see you next week on the regular Rebel Force Radio podcast. So make sure you're subscribed. If you're just one of these after show people watching us on YouTube, get over to rebelforceradio.com or search for Rebel Force Radio in your podcatcher of choice and subscribe, follow, whatever it takes today. So for RFR, I'm Jason.
I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
the Force will be with you always.